My name is Gonzalo Garcia, and I almost died today. I woke up with a strange green liquid sliding down my throat. It was a healing potion that cost 100 gold coins. My yellow coat was torn and covered in blood, but the wound had already closed. As I stood up in the stone hall, memories from 2 lives mixed inside my head, and I understood what was happening. A young noble named Elijah Ocel had stabbed me with a dagger. I had teased him too sharply about his family, and he lost control in front of everyone at the banquet. His father, Baron Otto, slapped him hard, and the dagger fell to the floor. My own father, Baron Raymond, stood up, ready to fight. Luckily, Father Rory, the priest, stepped between us. He suggested we move to the council hall to talk things over. I was glad, because I did not want a war. In the council hall, the 2 barons almost started fighting again. Baron Otto wanted to protect his son, and my father wanted Elijah hanged for attacking a noble in public. Father Rory warned them both that the Blood Brotherhood cult was causing trouble, and the Count and the church did not want noble fights right now. He even threatened to take all the priests away from both our lands for 10 years. That changed the mood. I put my hand behind my back and showed my father 5 fingers as a secret signal. He understood and demanded 1,000 gold coins, plus 100 for the potion. Baron Otto shouted and wanted to go to war instead, but I watched his face carefully. When I saw his brow twitch, I knew he was ready to give in. We bargained back and forth. In the end, I agreed to 600 gold coins total, and I also promised to stop chasing a girl named Lolita. Elijah's eyes lit up when he heard that. He thinks he will marry her next year. I did not mind much. I am the youngest son, so I have no right to inherit anything, and Lolita's father would never choose me anyway. 600 gold coins are worth more than my pride. After everyone left, my father patted my shoulder. He said I did well in the bargaining, but my little tricks will not work forever on old barons. He told me he would give the 500 coins, since he paid for the potion himself, to my eldest sister Maeve. She will use the money in the capital to build connections for me. Then he looked out the stone window and told me something important. Next spring, I will become a frontier knight. I must prepare myself and remember our family motto, grow and spread, with roots firm in honesty. Today, I learned more about my strange new powers. I was lying on my pine bed, wrapped in a warm wool blanket, examining the dagger that almost killed me. I wore black mink gloves while handling it, just to be safe. When I focused on the dagger, words appeared in my vision like a floating screen. The dagger is called a concealed dagger. It gives the user a small bonus to strategy, and it was made by the secret Blood Brotherhood cult. The weapon hides its own magical nature and stirs up anger and confusion in anyone who touches it. That explains why young Elijah lost control so easily. To the naked eye, it just looked like an ordinary dagger with a cheap red gem on the hilt. Little Martin, my servant, knelt beside me. He is the old butler's son, only 16, and his family has served mine for generations. When I looked at him, his information appeared in my mind. His skills are all low, but his loyalty is 100, which is perfect. I had sent him to pick up the dagger from the banquet hall. Elijah was too busy thinking about his fiancée to care what happened to it. I do not plan to chase after the Blood Brotherhood. That is work for counts and bishops, not for a baron's second son like me. I just need to stay alert. My strange power lets me see people's loyalty, so no spy can fool me. Later, I rode out with my father and his soldiers to Fruitwood Town. Today was the day to choose new squires for the frontier knights. The town square was packed with villagers, serfs, and even some slaves. Every poor family had brought their sons, hoping one might be chosen. Becoming a squire is almost the only way for a common boy to rise in life. My father sat on a red bench while Martin brought him fruit wine. Then he announced the selection, saying I would be the future lord of the frontier lands. I looked over the crowd with my special ability. Blue numbers appeared next to each young man. Most villagers had bravery of only 1 or even less, with 0 in everything else. It was disappointing. These people had no books, no training, and barely enough food to grow strong. I realized I would have to rely on loyalty more than raw talent. I spoke loudly to the crowd and told them my test. Anyone who wanted to be a squire had to run barefoot from the town all the way to my father's castle. Even the slaves were allowed to try. I wanted to see who had true potential, and I wanted to test how my loyalty numbers worked in real situations. 2 boys caught my eye. Charles, The butcher's second son, had slightly better bravery because he ate well. Yorak, a carpenter's second son, had spent his life walking from village to village helping his parents, so he had good endurance and even a little bit of knowledge. Both started with loyalty of 30. As they ran, something interesting happened. Charles began to struggle because he was a bit overweight and not used to hard running. In his heart, he started complaining about his father and even about me, the noble lord. His loyalty dropped by 1 point. But Yorak noticed I was watching him. Feeling proud and hopeful, he ran even harder. His loyalty stayed strong. This told me something important. People are not just numbers in a game. Each person reacts differently to the same challenge. Some lose loyalty, some keep it, and some might even gain it. The slaves started fast because their feet were already bare and tough, but hunger caught up with them. Their empty stomachs slowed them down, and the villagers passed them by. When 30 young men had crossed the finish line at our castle, I called the race over. The boys who were just a few steps away looked heartbroken. The ones further back looked terrified, probably thinking about the beatings their fathers would give them at home. I now have 30 candidates to work with and a new understanding of my power. After 30 young men passed the running test, I made it clear to everyone that they were not yet squires. They still had 3 more months of hard training ahead. Only those who could endure the pain and keep their loyalty strong would earn the right to serve me. I do not want weak followers who complain at the first hardship. I want men as loyal and steady as oxen, ready to raise their arms for me against any enemy. This matters because the frontier lands are dangerous. They lie far beyond the kingdom's borders, full of monsters, bandits, rebels, foreign tribes, and rival nobles. If my attendants lost faith too easily, they might betray me on my second night there and run off to become bandits in the mountains. The good fertile lands were taken long ago by the great nobles, so newcomers like me get nothing easy. The training began outside my father's castle in the icy winter wind. I followed modern training ideas I remembered from my past life, focused on obedience above all else. I shouted at them, pushed them hard, and reminded them that slowness on the battlefield costs arms and heads. I know how to train people because I grew up as a knight attendant myself, caring for my father's armor and horses before learning combat. By the end of winter, only 15 young men remained. The others had either quit or lost too much loyalty. Then I decided to do something important. I called each remaining boy into my quarters for a private talk. In my previous life, I had been a leader, and I knew how much a personal conversation can strengthen loyalty. A good leader shares food and hardship with his people, but he also keeps a respectful distance. I had little Martin bring hot meat soup to each visitor, but I did not serve it myself. They needed to feel valued, not equal. Yorak came first. He was so nervous he would not even look at me. Common folk are taught from birth never to meet a noble's eyes. I placed my hand on his shoulder and told him to look up and speak the truth. His eyes filled with tears, but after drinking the warm soup, he began to relax. He told me about his carpenter parents, his 2 older brothers, and his little sister. He worried about her dowry, since skills are passed only to sons. Then he shared his real dream. All his life, he had traveled with his parents from village to village, listening to old men tell stories of famous knights under the big trees. He had always dreamed of becoming a knight himself, but as a second son, he knew he had to start working early or he would only be a burden. I smiled and told him something true. We are the same. I am a second son too. Something changed in him then. His fear melted into a real smile, and he answered me with strong feeling. Yes, young master. We are, in that moment, we became more than lord and servant. We became 2 young men who understood each other. After our talk, Yorak's loyalty jumped to 90, only 10 points from full. His bravery had also grown from the training and the better food. 3 months of meat soup had finally let his body reach its true strength. Then Lao came in. I already knew his story, so I did not ask about his family. I went straight to asking about his troubles. Lyle is a strong young man, stronger than most. He even has a special trait that boosts his bravery and helps him grow faster from training. On paper, he would make an excellent squire. But something is wrong with him. After 3 months of training, meals, and my personal attention, his loyalty has not moved at all. It still sits at 30, the same as the day he started. Every other young man grew more loyal through our time together, but not Lyle. I am not sure yet what this means, but I will keep a careful eye on him. I finally understood why Lao's loyalty would not rise. When he first came to Fruitwood Town with his parents, his loyalty was already at 60. But the moment my father announced the squire selection, it crashed down to 30. Lao's parents are waste cleaners for my father's castle. They empty all the restrooms, including mine. It sounds like a lowly job, but it is actually one of the most trusted positions near the nobles. You cannot let just anyone handle your most private matters. His family has done this work for generations, and their loyalty stays at a perfect 100. The problem was Lao himself. He is strong and talented, and some knights had wanted him as a squire before. But once they learned his parents' job, they all changed their minds. No knight wants hands that smell of waste polishing his armor. Among commoners, waste cleaners are the most mocked group of all. Even hungry peasants curse them to feel better about their own sad lives. But Lao had something else. He loved a girl named Amy, the daughter of a free tenant farmer at the orchard near town. The two of them had planned to run away together into the wilderness. They might have frozen to death, but at least they would have loved each other freely. Then my squire's selection destroyed that dream. I forced him into 3 months of military training instead of letting him elope. After this heartfelt talk, his loyalty finally rose to 50. That is the highest it will go on its own. From here, it will depend on what I do next. Then there is Ali, a 14-year-old slave boy. His parents were taken as war prizes by my father years ago, and they still cannot speak our language well. Most slave children are too hungry and weak to develop properly, so for Ali to make the top 30 was almost a miracle. During the race, he showed real cleverness. He did not rush forward. He brought his only water flask and begged some food from kind villagers before the run began. Then he ran close behind others to block the wind, and when everyone else grew tired and thirsty, he drank his water and ate his food. He finished in 30th place through pure wit. His special trait even boosts his strategy skill. His weak body nearly failed during winter training, and without my quiet help, he would have been cut. But now his loyalty sits at a full 100. Out of my final 15 boys, every single one has loyalty above 80, except Lyle. Only 2 have special traits, Lyle and Ali. Late that night, my father Baron Raymond and my elder brother Guy II came to sit with me. Guy is named after our late grandfather. He has always been the first heir to our Brighton lands. Both of them had been watching my training methods all winter. My father could tell the training ideas I used were valuable, and in our kingdom, military knowledge is a guarded family treasure passed down through written records. My father mentioned the Snowpine lands nearby, owned by Baron Otto, the man whose son stabbed me. Father has already sent people to watch them. He reminded me that the Ocell family's line of knowledge was broken in the last generation, and Otto only regained his title through military achievements. A weaker neighbor makes our land stronger. I have also been hunting hidden cult members in Brighton on my own. Then my father spoke seriously. He told me that our family motto, to grow and take root in honesty, has been both our strength and our weakness for 1,000 years. Our family encourages many children, which means land gets divided again and again. Each branch grows poorer, but the Garcia name has spread across the whole kingdom. We may hold small titles, but there are so many of us. My eldest sister, Maeve, had already sent me the charter for my new frontier lands. Travel is hard in winter, so I will wait until spring to leave. My father gave me strict orders. Once I am on my new land, I am not to take any people or supplies from Brighton beyond what has already been assigned to me. Everything here belongs to my brother in the future. I answered honestly. I understand, Father. Everything in Brighton will belong to my brother. What I am doing now already takes from his property. When my new territory grows, I will give back to him. My brother Guy smiled and said he believed my lands would one day be even richer than Brighton. Our blood ties us together. Then my father held both our hands, and the 3 of us spoke our family motto together. For the Garcia family, may it grow strong and last forever. Before I leave for my new frontier lands, I still have work to do. First, I rode with my men to Yorock's mountain village. The forests there are full of fine timber, which is why his parents settled there as carpenters. I could not recruit any of the other villagers, because they belong to my brother Guy's future estate. My father has always said the best way for brothers to stay close is to keep their accounts clear. When we arrived, the village headman came bowing, but I ignored him. His true master will be my brother, not me. I went straight to Yurok's home. His parents knelt in terror the moment they saw us. They thought their son had done something terrible and that our whole family would be punished. Their rough hands shook against the cold ground. I patted Yurok on the shoulder and told them to stand up, because Yurok had done very well and was now a knight squire. They hugged each other and wept with joy. Little Martin quietly placed flour and cured meat beside them before stepping back. It was more food than they had seen in a long time, and they could only kneel and bow their thanks. I arranged for Yurok's little sister to come work as a laundress in the castle. Among serfs, castle workers hold the highest status. This helps Yurok's family, but it also gives me a quiet way to keep their loyalty strong, though I hope I never need to use it. I also asked Yurok to find his second brother John, who had already left the barony. Since John no longer serves here, I am free to recruit him. I told Yurok to ask if John or any skilled friends wanted to join me on the frontier. Skilled workers will be precious for building new lands. Yurok planned to leave for the city that very night. Next came Lyle's problem. He was still meeting his beloved Amy in secret at the orchard. Her family are free tenant farmers, not serfs, so I cannot simply order the marriage. Worse, Amy's parents look down on Lyle because his mother was once a slave. Even serfs refuse to marry their daughters to his kind. On the way to the orchard, I thought of many polite ways to handle it. Offering gifts, making fair trades, talking things through. Then I laughed at myself. My modern way of thinking was too soft. They were free commoners, but I was a noble. When we arrived, Amy was already locked in the cellar. Her father, old Ike, took one look at Lyle standing beside me and understood. I gave a simple order. Lyle, hold him down. My strong squire pinned old Ike to the ground. I slapped the old man several times and kicked him aside. Then I told him to bring Amy out, and my voice left no room for argument. He cried out to his other children to fetch her quickly. There is no point reasoning with deep prejudice. Sometimes a show of force is the only way. A knight squire marrying a fruit picker is nothing shameful. I brought the whole family to the small church in Orchard Town. Before the priest, Lyle and Amy both said, "I do." According to the Church of Light, when two free people agree to marry, the Lord of Light blesses them and the kingdom's law recognizes it. Only slaves have no such right. In that moment, Lyle's loyalty jumped from 50 all the way to 100. These past days, I have been working hard to earn the loyalty of all 15 of my squires, one by one. It reminds me of my younger days in my other life, when I would go door to door meeting neighbors with youthful energy. If I had been born a baron with inherited power and generations of loyal servants, this would all be easy. But I am only a second son, so I must do everything myself. Finally, winter ended. My father led me into the family library, up to a hidden door. I politely turned my back while he opened the secret mechanism. Only he and my brother guy know how it works. That is the rule of our nobility. Not even father and son break it. We both wore silver-white armor with black cloaks bearing our family crest, the purple cedar tree with spreading branches and green leaves. Beyond the narrow doorway stood something amazing. A great purple tree reached all the way up to the highest point of the castle. Its trunk was so wide that 10 men linking arms could barely wrap around it. Sunlight poured through its green leaves like countless golden stars. I took off my silver helmet and let my long black hair fall free. I reached out and gently touched the purple bark. The tree seemed to whisper the stories of my ancestors, their heartbeats pulsing through the generations of the Garcia family. The hidden courtyard behind the secret door held the most precious thing in my family. A great wisteria tree, for 100 years old, stood within high white walls. Its purple trunk was so wide that 10 men could barely wrap around it. The lower part was covered in round marks where old branches had been cut long ago, each one a trace left by my ancestors. Beneath the tree lay the blue-green tombstones of my father's father, grandfather, and forebears. Through my special panel, I could see its full details. This tree came from the forest of purple trees, and its wood is perfect for crafting bows, while its fruit serves as magical material. I lifted my hand from the bark, stepped back 3 paces, and knelt on one knee before the tree and my father. The morning sun shone down like the gaze of the Lord of Light himself. My father touched my shoulder armor with a silver sword. Then he spoke the words that would change my life forever. Under the wisteria tree, witnessed by our ancestors, I, Raymond Garcia, Declare that I grant Gonzalo Garcia the family inheritance. It must never be passed to anyone outside the Garcia bloodline. I placed my right hand over my heart and raised my left hand. I swore to accept the inheritance, to uphold the 6 virtues of knighthood, to protect my people as a frontier knight, and to fulfill my duty forever in the name of the Lord of Light. My father lifted up a false tombstone that hid our family treasures. Inside were 3 things that had carried our family through the generations. A vial of advancement elixir, a young mysterious sapling that would take 200 years to mature, and a magical purple longbow crafted by an enchanter named Trikavi, which improves arrow accuracy. My father then carefully mixed the potion. The recipe is only passed down by word of mouth, never written. He told me to pay close attention because this was the most important moment for our family line. Into the base liquid went 5 drops of rosewood essence, 10 grams of finely ground magic crystal, and 1 drop of a magic hawk's tear, in that exact order. Finally, he cut his palm and let a few drops of his own blood mix in. The Garcia blood was the last ingredient. I drank the entire potion in one go. A wild energy flooded through me. My muscles shifted and changed. My heart pounded violently. My silver armor began to reshape itself on my body, merging with me as only a knight's armor can. I groaned in pain and tried to pull it off, but my father stopped me. Pain always feels endless while it lasts, but when it ends, it seems to have passed in an instant. When it was over, I lay on the ground gasping, then looked at my panel and laughed out loud. My bravery had jumped to 9. My spirit had risen to 2. Thanks to my 2 lives joined together, a gift I could only call luck. I had also gained 2 new traits. The first was Purple Arrow Heart, which boosts my bravery training, my archery growth, and my aim. The second was something rare and precious called Purple Light. My father was stunned when he heard the name. No Garcia had awakened this talent in 200 years, not since a great ancestor called the Violet Dawn Archer, whose name is still remembered across all human lands. I picked up my new purple bow, drew it, and loosed an arrow. A streak of purple light shot across the room and pierced straight through the far wall. Light poured through the hole it left behind. My father stood amazed. Then his expression changed to something sad. For a moment, I wondered if he was thinking of making me his heir instead of my elder brother, like some great emperor choosing by merit. But no, the truth was simpler. He said with a heavy heart, "The family's forbidden grounds have a damaged wall that needs repair. I'll deduct 10 gold coins from your pioneer funds." My father was just reluctant to part with money. Life as a poor frontier knight was already hard, and now it would be a little harder. Still, he warned me seriously. Until you have absolute strength, never reveal this power unless it is truly necessary. Then, despite himself, he gave me 3 more branches of precious purple wood. Even my second brother had never received such treatment. Fathers always favor the most gifted child. He explained the meaning of these branches. A purple wood bow can be remade by a magic craftsman if mine ever breaks, and these 3 branches should last my line for 200 years, maybe longer. If a talented descendant appears among my family, they can make another purple wood bow. Our family has always been known for archery, ever since my ancestors served as the finest longbowmen for the King of August. Later they found the purple wood trees and built our legacy around them. A tree takes 200 years before its trunk and fruit become magical materials, so my own descendants will have to wait 2 centuries before they can harvest from their own land. My father also asked me to remember my weaker second brother Joey one day. Joey has the least talent of all of us. When my lands grow strong, my elder brother Guy and I must help him. We are bound by blood, even if we keep our accounts clear. My father is 48 now, old for a human knight, and my mother passed long ago. Most of his energy goes to us children. I understood something deeper then. Our family may hold only small titles, but we form a complete system. Older branches sell purple wood and fruits to younger ones until those younger branches finally reach 200 years and can profit in turn. Over the centuries, many opportunists have tried to steal our trees. But the trees cannot be transplanted, and the seedlings need 200 years to grow. During those 200 years, our family has endless ways to take revenge through trade, marriage, lawsuits, deception, theft, or even war. No other family can afford such a long struggle against us. Finally, my father taught me about battle aura, the the special energy that forms in a knight's body. It strengthens the physique and fighting ability. At higher levels, a knight can attach this aura to his body and eventually project it outward into shape. My father and I spent 3 full days in the family's restricted area, training hard together on our inherited combat techniques. I did not need more lessons in the bow, as I have trained with it since childhood. What I needed most now was to master this new battle aura flowing through me. While the snow was melting and I was still preparing to leave my father's castle, a wedding was taking place in the northwest of Valian province. Baron Otto was marrying his son Elijah, the same boy who had stabbed me, to Lolita, the girl I had given up. Only 6 barons were invited. Baron Otto claimed it was because of cult trouble, but the real reason was money. The 600 gold coins he paid me had left him unable to host a proper gathering, even with Lolita's dowry. Her father, kind Baron Kant, was quietly embarrassed by the small affair. In a bedroom of that castle, Elijah was raging at a masked cultist of the Brotherhood of Blood. He demanded respect as a future lord and threatened the man. But the cultist simply tore a blood-red gemstone necklace from Elijah's chest, then beat his face until it was swollen beyond recognition. Without that necklace, Elijah's eyes turned from crimson back to their normal brown, and the truth came out. Last summer, Elijah had not become the heir by accident. The cultists had given him poison, and he had placed it in his elder brother's wine. The Brotherhood had wanted to corrupt a stronger target, like my own brother Guy, but their spies in our Brighton lands had all disappeared, thanks to the hidden cultists I myself had been uncovering. So they had settled for weak Elijah instead. Baron Otto burst in wearing silver armor and carrying a longsword. He had heard everything. With 2 swift strikes, he cut the cultist cleanly in half. Then he turned to his son with terrible sorrow. He said he would have challenged my father to a duel to defend Elijah from stabbing me. He would have secured Elijah a future, even as a frontier knight. But killing his own brother was beyond forgiveness. Elijah knelt weeping and bloody, begging for mercy. Baron Otto reminded him that their House Ocel had no ancient heritage like my Garcia family. He had earned his title through battle. Then the Baron helped Elijah to his feet, only to declare that his younger brother Elijah would be the new heir. He said the men of House Ocel die standing, and ordered Elijah to face his end. But Elijah could not even do that. He struggled and cried like a frightened child. Seeing this cowardice, the last pity in the Baron's heart vanished. He lifted his son by the throat and prepared to run him through, leaving the body whole as a final mercy. But something monstrous happened. A thick crimson mist poured into the room. Baron Otto froze, blood running from his mouth. He coughed up pieces of his own damaged organs and collapsed. Then a hammer struck the back of his helmet from behind. A figure stepped in wearing a crimson robe and a blood god mask, carrying a hammer and a strange red lantern that released the scarlet mist. This was Priest Everett of the Brotherhood of Blood, a low cult leader raised to knighthood through a sacred blood chalice. Such men rarely live long because of the side effects, but the cult has no shortage of desperate people willing to pay that price. For months, the cult had hidden inside Otto's castle disguised as servants and slaves. They had tricked Elijah into poisoning his own father's drinking water with a tiny colorless dose all winter long. When the blood lantern was lit, the buildup of poison activated all at once. Betrayal within a family often comes quietly, almost unseen. The priest picked up the blood-red necklace and placed it back on Elijah's neck. The boy's eyes turned crimson again, his mind clouded. The necklace could control an ordinary person for a minute, but a new knight for only 10 seconds. That was enough. The priest gave one cold order. Strike at his heart. Elijah picked up his own father's fallen sword, removed the silver armor, and drove the blade into Baron Otto's heart. Meanwhile, in the banquet hall, the 7 barons had received a summons from Count Terence, governor of Valian province, calling them to arms against the Brotherhood of Blood. They were already grumbling, trying to figure out how to send as few men as possible without getting punished. They were also puzzled. The cult had been causing chaos since last summer, so why was the Count only calling them to war now, in spring? What was his real plan? As the barons whispered their worries, a crimson mist began to seep silently through the cracks in the stone floor and around the doors, moving like a living thing. I would learn of all this later. But that day, far away, I was still holding my purple bow, still planning for my frontier lands, completely unaware that the Brotherhood of Blood had just beheaded the leadership of an entire region in a single night. I only learned these dark details much later, but the slaughter at Baron Otto's castle was far worse than the murder of just one man. Father Rory was the first to sense the danger. He shouted to the 7 barons that it was blood poison, but Baron Kant only glanced at him with mild irritation. The other nobles reached for their summons papers, annoyed at the priest. The church was always like this, acting superior and meddling without offering real help. The banquet was too loud for most to hear clearly. The barons pretended not to notice and kept discussing how to send as few soldiers as possible to the count. Baron Kant even planned to speak with my own father about the recruitment later. Then Baron Enzo, a man in his prime, suddenly felt a painful pressure in his chest. Something was trying to burst out, but his fighting aura was pushing it down. He looked around and saw pink dust spreading through the whole hall. Father Rory was already running for the door, shouting that this was blood poison, but shallow, since they had not visited Otto's castle recently. The barons needed to suppress it with their fighting aura and escape at once. Kind Baron Kant had no such luck. He had been visiting Otto often to arrange the marriage and had drunk deeply from his wine for months. Now, old and weak, he collapsed onto the table and could not rise. The 6 remaining barons charged as one, but they wore only fine wool wedding clothes, not armor. Their own knights had already been turned against them by cultists hidden among the servants. The barons even suspected that other nobles, perhaps the southeastern lords or even Count Terence himself, were secretly playing games with the Brotherhood of Blood as pawns. Baron Enzo grabbed a fallen hammer and shield. The 6 formed a defensive circle and fought toward the gate. Cultists in plate armor blocked them. Priest Everett cursed his weak followers as useless fools and handed them a bowl of thick blood-red soup. The cultists drank it with wild, fanatical eyes and gained the strength of knights for a short time. But Enzo smashed their heads like a game of whack-a-mole. Without true fighting spirit, they were just reckless fools. Then Everett ordered arrows and stones to rain down without care for friend or foe. The barons, poisoned, bleeding, and exhausted, finally shouted their surrender. They promised to pay ransom. The cultists were not foolish. The poison and the blood soup had been costly, and living barons meant gold squeezed from peasants later. The 6 barons were dragged to the castle prison. The cultists who drank the soup paid a terrible price. Their bodies rapidly aged into skeletons with only thin skin stretched over them. Everything has a cost, and if knight-level strength came free, the Brotherhood would have ruled the continent long ago. Outside the castle, firewood was being stacked, but not for the dead. It was for Father Rory. Everett was excited beyond measure. He had waited for this day. If the Church of Light had not forbidden nobles from joining the Brotherhood's faith, he could have been a normal priest himself, blessing weddings, counting tithes, listening to beautiful choirs. The Church of Light had taken all that happiness from him, and now he would have his judgment. Father Rory was nailed to a cross, his hands and feet pierced, his body tied tight. Blood dripped onto the pyre below. He kept murmuring prayers to the light god. This enraged Everett. He whipped the old priest until his chest was bloody and torn. Then he ordered, "Seal his mouth." The cultist stepped forward eagerly with needles and thread and clumsily sewed the priest's mouth shut. Elijah watched all of this from the outer wall with no feeling at all. He had already signed his name on parchment, converting to the blood god. There was no going back. Anyone who learned of his new faith would see him as dead meat, so he was trapped forever. He had also killed his own father and brother. Betrayal is punished with purification, and he had no path left but forward. Then something happened that would echo all the way to me. A young slave boy was brought before Elijah. He was small, dark-skinned, and looked like any other slave in Cedar territory. Elijah, puffed up with his new title, imitated his dead father's harsh tone. "Hope you bring useful news, or I will cut out your tongue." The slave knelt, too afraid to look up. He stammered that he had seen a purple cedar banner passing through Cedar territory. It seemed to belong to young Gonzalo Garcia. Elijah was pleased to be called Baron, but tried to sound fierce. "You are lying. How could a slave know Gonzalo?" The slave bowed lower, trembling. "Everyone in Cedar territory knows Lord Elijah took his beloved woman from black-haired Gonzalo. Only the Garcia family nearby has black hair, And that one is young, so it must be him. Flattered again, Elijah kicked the slave aside and said, "Go drink some meat broth. I reward you." What Elijah did not know was that this slave was no ordinary slave. He was my Ali. The clever slave boy who won my loyalty last winter had somehow made his way into the enemy's camp and was now feeding information. I had not yet reached my frontier lands, but my pieces were already moving on this dark board. The enemy came for me faster than I expected, but I had already prepared the trap. After Ali brought his false report, Elijah paced the outer wall, biting his finger. Finally, he clapped his head and decided to send cavalry to scout. If it was a real army, he would grab gold and silver and run. The scouts soon returned with the news that I was leading just 300 people on an expansion journey. 200 slaves and 100 farm serfs, organized by family, buying supplies at every small town along the way. To Elijah, a group like mine was not an army at all. It was a walking treasure trove, and he had long wanted me dead. He took the plan to Priest Everett. The priest was reluctant at first. The Brotherhood's real mission was chaos, not fighting barons. But Everett knew his cult was poor. Leading over 100 followers means constant hunger and endless questions about where the next meal will come from. Prayers do not drop food from the sky. My supplies were too tempting. There was still the problem of Knight Hans, one of the late Baron Otto's true knights. Hans was now bound hand and foot, his armor stripped, his mind blank with grief. The lord he had sworn to protect was dead, the heir had joined a cult, and now he was being pushed to attack another noble. A knight's honor is loyalty, bravery, and devotion. Hans would rather bite his tongue off than betray his oath. But knights cannot die that easily. Elijah held his own brother Elijah's severed head with blood still on his hands, shouting like a madman that this was the only way he could become Lord of Snowpine. He demanded Hans swear loyalty. When Hans refused, Everett placed the blood-red necklace on the knight's neck for just a few seconds. That was long enough to force the words out of Hans's mouth. A knight must keep his vow once spoken. Hans belonged to the Ocel family, and Elijah was now the only remaining Ocel. Slowly, Hans surrendered to this broken truth. Meanwhile, far outside Snowpine Town, my own camp was already digging in. 14 of my squires, led by their captain, were directing slaves with whips to dig trenches. Ali was not among them. I had sent my clever slave boy out as a spy, and in his place little Martin had taken over the last team as leader. My 300 people were split into 15 small teams. Each team had 4 leaders with 5 members under each. We used a collective responsibility system. If one man ran away, his whole team would be punished, along with the team leaders above them. This made escape almost impossible. The settlers had been training since the end of winter, so they were not helpless peasants. We had no proper weapons for everyone, so we sharpened cedar sticks and hardened them over fires to make long spears. These simple tools should not be underestimated. Most armies in this age are just armed farmers, and a single spear can punch a fatal hole. Smearing them with mud or dung would guarantee infection and death, but I did not order that. My scouts had told me Elijah's force was mostly Snowpine townsfolk with few true cultists. Those men were valuable. Their lords might pay ransom for them, or I could claim them as spoils of war. How did I know all of this was coming? It began with the hidden dagger. My panel had shown me its true nature from the start. It was a cult weapon made to stir anger and madness in those who touched it, designed to spark wars between baronies. After that banquet where Elijah stabbed me, I told my father Raymond everything, and we had been quietly planting spies in Snowpine ever since. The Brotherhood had also placed spies in our Brighton lands, but my panel let me find them one by one and remove them in secret. My father never warned Baron Otto. The weaker our neighbors grew, the safer Brighton became. These lands had once belonged to our Garcia family anyway. Long ago, Viscount Brighton Garcia had to sell them off to raise money to expand. Back then our purple cedar trees were still young, and most magical materials had to be bought from the main family in the purple cedar forest. The Garcia family does not give land to heirs who live too close together. That only leads to brothers killing brothers and wiping out the bloodline. On the other side, Elijah rode proudly in shining silver armor, carrying a fine iron magic sword. The Ocel family banner with its pine snow tree fluttered in the wind. He had even copied the old Garcia crest pattern, but without our magical plants it meant nothing. Priest Everett walked at the head of the army on foot, wearing plate armor and carrying a hammer. Most clergy come from poor backgrounds and never learned to ride horses. Everett had passed his church tests and gained strength matching a knight, so he could walk at the front without losing dignity. Through threats and false promises, Elijah had gathered 800 people, including men, women, and even children. Many who saw through the cult fled rather than march. 800 against my 300 sounds terrible, but I was ready. They came over the hills and saw my camp in the distance. 300 soldiers beneath the black banner with the purple cedar tree, already finishing wooden spikes that tilted outward. Everett sensed something was wrong. It looked like the enemy knew they were coming. At this moment, Everett hesitated. The cult's usual style was to poison, deceive, and run, not to charge headlong into prepared defenses. Had Baron Otto not fallen for exactly this kind of straight attack? But Elijah could see my long black hair. He was at the front of my line, instantly filled with hatred at my brown eyes and noble bearing. He lowered his iron helmet over his whole head and shouted in imitation of his dead father, "Charge with me." For Baron Elijah, Knight Hans, bound by his forced oath, could not stop him. A knight must follow his lord into battle. He spurred his horse forward too. Priest Everett cursed loudly after them. "Fool! Everyone stay still and wait for orders." But Elijah was already racing toward me, his eyes fixed on my face with pure hate. The trap was about to close, and this time I would be the one deciding how it ended. Elijah charged at me alone, screaming that I was a coward. His voice cracked across the field as he ranted about the cruelty of war, his family's blood, and how I still played silly games with peasants while he had become a true man. He demanded I come forward and fight him fairly as I had promised at the banquet. He stopped his horse about 100 meters from my line. Under his lowered faceplate, he was grinning. I could guess his real plan. If I accepted his challenge, he would signal Knight Hans, Priest Everett, and his 3 knight-level generals to rush out together. 4 against 1. A very clever little trap for a very small mind. I sat calmly on a bench and let him shout for 10 full minutes. Then I snapped my fingers. A servant knelt beside me with a silver tray and fine porcelain cup. I lifted my faceplate and took a slow sip of hot tea. "Loud enough for both armies to hear," I said. "This is as smooth as Lolita." Then I smiled. The porcelain was one of my only treasures. My father had given it to me to sell in a larger town, but today it earned its price in another way. The tea was not truly strong tea either. As a second son, I could not afford real leaves. But it looked like luxury, and that was enough. Elijah's throat was already raw from shouting. Watching me drink from expensive porcelain while mentioning his fiancée in front of every peasant and slave in Snowpine drove him into fury. Those lowly people would gossip about their lord now. He already wondered if Lolita had truly been faithful to him. The uncertainty ate at him. He turned back and roared at Priest Everett to bring the army forward, threatening to drive the priest off his lands. Everett, looking at the fool on horseback, finally gave the order to charge. No cavalry would rush ahead alone into enemy lines unless there was no ambush. So Everett believed the camp was only what it appeared to be. 300 settlers with sharpened sticks. Beside me stood Knight Luke. He wore a gray robe over chainmail and no helmet, looking like a farmer. My father had sent him in disguise as my secret protection. When Elijah's main force finally approached, I drew my purple cedar bow and loosed 2 arrows with my inner energy. Ding ding. Both arrows struck his horse. The animal screamed and fell hard, throwing Elijah to the ground. Knight Hans had seen enough battles to roll safely aside, but Elijah was a mess on the ground. There is a true story on this continent of a king kicked in the stomach by a frightened horse, dying of a ruptured bowel before he could even summon his aura. Death is quick and does not care about titles. Because of my personal grudge with Elijah, as long as he was not dead, I would not waste my arrows on anyone else. Then the real surprise came. From inside my camp tents, 30 archers leapt out in perfect unison. These were elite Garcia bowmen, loaned to me by my father. Our family is famous for archery, and these men had fought in real wars. At the same time, the horn calls inside our camp kept sounding, confusing the enemy about our numbers. Their arrows fell like a storm on Elijah's army. The Snowpine townsfolk at the front pushed forward with pitchforks and sticks, screamed, and tried to flee in both directions. The cultists behind them slashed at the runners, but a few zealots could not kill 800 panicked peasants. The front line vanished, leaving the cultists exposed in the open. I gave simple orders. Spears up. Squad leaders report position every 20 seconds. No talk of casualties or fleeing. Anything that could shake morale was forbidden. My 15 squires and their teams held their cedar spears steady. Priest Everett saw what was happening and started running backward while he still could. Years of fleeing had made him fast. That was how he had become a priest in the first place, by outrunning every disaster. He shouted for his zealots to charge and kill me, yelling at Elijah to avenge his father, suggesting I had done something to Lolita. Even as he lied, he was stripping off his stolen plate armor to run lighter. Then the true blow fell. On the far horizon, my father appeared. Baron Raymond had been hiding near Snowpine Town for a long time. He rode forward with 2 knights and 10 cavalrymen at impossible speed. Their war horses had foam at the nostrils and bloodshot eyes. They had been fed a dangerous drug that shortens a horse's life in exchange for one final sprint. Only battle veterans rode that way. Everett saw the black dots racing toward him and fled in terror. Meanwhile, Elijah himself was still coming for me. He had lost his horse, but not his madness. Ordinary arrows could not pierce his silver armor, and I did not carry a heavy hammer. Luke warned me not to take his sword head-on, because Elijah carried his dead father's magic iron sword. In all of Brighton, only my own father owned such a weapon. Raising knights is the most expensive thing a poor noble family can do. My settlers screamed and scrambled aside, making a path for the madman. Elijah felt unstoppable. He roared, "Gonzalo, accept the judgment of the Holy Lord." Splash. He fell like a giant stone into the pit I had prepared. 3 meters deep, covered with dry leaves, impossible to climb out of in silver armor. His remaining cultists saw their baron vanish with a splash, and their morale shattered. Most of Snowpine's army had not even reached my line. They scattered, knelt, or begged for mercy. I had given my archers strict orders. Shoot the cultists. The enslaved farmers were to be captured by my squires for later ransom. The cult members were worth nothing, but common villagers could be traded back to their lords. Then I called out my next command. Fire! Little Martin and the servants wore gloves and lifted iron pots filled with boiling water and crushed nettle leaves. They poured the scalding mixture down through the observation slit in Elijah's helmet. He had been looking up, trying to find a foothold. The burning liquid hit his face directly. He screamed like an animal, tore off his silver armor and helmet, and clawed at his own skin, trying to scrape the burning nettles away. He who had dreamed moments ago of killing me, rescuing Lolita, and riding off to join the blood church now curled in a ball at the bottom of the pit, twitching. He had never felt real pain in his life before. I surrender. I will pay the ransom. I am the Baron of Snowpine. I can pay. Help me. Gonzalo, please save me. I ordered my men to capture him. This was not the time to enjoy his suffering. We still had fleeing enemies to round up before my father arrived. I spared Elijah's life for careful reasons. Technically, he was already Baron of Snowpine, missing only the official parchment. As a noble without a title of my own, I had no legal right to judge another baron's life. Only Father Rory and the other barons held that power. If I had killed him on the battlefield, that would be one thing. But executing a captured noble equal? That was a rule even I had to respect. And in truth, even if no one was watching, I still would not have killed him immediately. My frontier knights badly needed money. A flash of purple light could send him to his blood god later, after his ransom had filled my chest. My second life had taught me patience. First make him pay gold coins, then let him die reasonably. His money would fund my frontier dreams while he rotted. A devilish smile crossed my face. I trusted my father, Baron Raymond, to make the right choice about Elijah's ultimate fate. He was a good father and a good lord, and I had just handed him a very valuable prisoner. Priest Everett reached the castle gate, shouting for his followers to let him in. He had outrun our cavalry by barely more than 100 meters. His trusted old cultists inside, men with peasant blood on their hands, obeyed quickly and began to crack the heavy gate open for him. Then came a sharp ringing sound. My father's bow bent like a crescent moon. The purple wood trembled once, and the arrow whistled through the air. It struck Everett in the left back, and without his armor it drove straight to his heart. The priest stiffened and fell, his life gone in seconds. He never knew that Baron Raymond's mounted archery was the finest in all the Valian region. My family carries the glory of divine archers in our blood. The moment their priest died, the cultists slammed the gate shut again, even though several of Everett's own trusted men were still outside. Those so-called trusted followers had been loyal to Everett alone, not to the men beside them. Sacrificing each other for the holy cause was simply their way. The locked-out men were quickly pinned down by our arrows. By sunset, my father's army had surrounded the Snowpine Castle and set up camp. He turned to me and asked, "Now, if it were you, what would you do next?" His voice had a small challenge in it. I was still rounding up fleeing serfs, but I answered right away. Normal siege encirclement would be the safe choice, slowly starving them out. But if we waited, the neighboring barons would recover and come to claim a share of our victory. I suggested we attempt negotiation first. If that failed, we should make a fake attack in the afternoon to drain their energy, then launch a real night attack after midnight. My father pressed me. "And what about the worst case? Have you considered it?" I said firmly. "I plan to lead the night attack myself. If it fails, then it will be my father's problem." He did not stop me. Without that kind of courage, what sort of knight would I be? Years ago on the battlefield, my father had led his brothers in a desperate charge as a longbowman. He understood. I had my own reasons for wanting to lead this attack. This was war, not a game between a baron and his son. After battle, loot is divided by merit, not by blood ties. If it were otherwise, my father's veterans would have lost their loyalty long ago. My personal achievements so far included the 300 settlers who held the line and the pursuit of the fleeing enemies, including Elijah. But the 30 elite archers who killed the main cultists belonged to my father. Knight Luke had defeated Hans. Most importantly, my father himself had killed the cult leader. That was the decisive blow of the whole battle. If I wanted a real share of the reward, I needed a real victory of my own. A successful night assault would be mine alone. Of course, I would never tell my father that I had inside help in that castle. I planned to exaggerate the difficulty to increase my share. The crying child gets the milk. My father pointed out one thing I had missed. We needed to send cavalry immediately to Count Terence, governor of Valian province, with a report of the battle. The letter should emphasize how hard the fighting had been and explain that our forces were now pinned down besieging the castle, so we could not send reinforcements to the southeast. My father sat down at the table and began writing on cotton and linen paper, pausing and thinking carefully as he went. I understood the game. The Count had waited until spring to issue his summons for a reason, and we were making sure not to walk into whatever he was planning. Past midnight, outside the castle walls, a small voice whispered, "Big brother, wake up, big brother." A young slave shook the cultist guard on duty. The guard jolted awake, ready to beg forgiveness for sleeping on his watch. Then he saw it was just a slave boy. He snarled that he had only closed his eyes for a moment. The slave pretended to be confused and said his leader had told him to change shifts. The cultist pushed him aside, barked at him to take the watch instead, and stumbled off toward the main building to sleep properly. That slave was Ali. My clever spy had walked himself right into the guard position on the wall. Ali understood his situation well. Other knights and servants in my service had been born serfs, and his slave background created a gap between them. He knew he must earn real merit to be accepted. Tonight was his chance. He peeled off his loose coat. Wrapped around his thin little body was a coil of hemp rope. That was his advantage. He was so small that even a huge bundle of rope barely showed. He tied the rope to the wall and let it drop down the outside. Below came the signal. "See you, cuckoo. See you, cuckoo." 17 black-clad figures rose from the foot of the wall, wearing nailed climbing shoes. As the first two reached the top, 2 more ropes went down, and soon armor and weapons were being hauled up batch by batch. The climbers were Yorok, Lyle, Little Martin, and the rest of my squires. Kafka, Eldon, Dylan, Yorkhan, Taylor, Marcus, Ryden, Waitya, Roger, Rohan, Milo Watt, Knight Luke, and myself. Even Ali was wearing armor now, looking like a tiny iron can. The armor was not ours. It had been scavenged from the battlefield with my father's permission, and we would return it after the job. "Luke, watch over them for me," I whispered. Luke nodded. Even without my order, he would have watched over these boys. He knew their parents well, old Martin the butler, the waste cleaners, all of them. The plan was simple. Luke and most of the squires would take the outer wall and force the gate open until my father's main force could enter. Lyle and I would slip into the main castle building ourselves. Breaking the outer gate by force would need a battering ram or a high-level knight, neither of which we had. I had a huge advantage inside. I knew the main building of a baron's castle better than any cultist could. I had grown up in Brighton, and most baron castles follow the same layout. Brighton's was just bigger because my grandfather had been a viscount. Lyle had an even rarer advantage. As the son of the waste cleaners, he knew every hidden hole, servant passage, and secret entrance in the castle. The cultists had been inside for only a few days in their entire lives. Lyle had spent his childhood crawling through its forgotten corners. We cleared the patrolling cultists on our path without a sound, and then the two of us slipped quietly into the main building. They didn't go into the main building to save the Baron. Their real goal was the Osier family's treasure. Every family had its own vault inside the castle, holding family heirlooms and riches. Gonzalo had only been inside once before, when he was promoted to knight. That was a moment he would never forget. How well Gonzalo could develop his future territory depended on this operation. If he found the Osier family's treasure, it would all be his. As for Baron Raymond asking about it, he probably had it stolen by the cultists. Otherwise, Gonzalo wouldn't be so eager. Such dangerous actions weren't his style. They reached the banquet hall, silently killing two cultists as they moved inside. The Baron's castle's main floor had a central banquet hall, divided into two parts, left and right. The side with better lighting was the kitchen. From the kitchen upward, each floor was a living space, where the nobles slept. The kitchen's fireplace heat rose up, connecting to each noble's room. Each room had its own toilet, built into a small balcony that extended outside. Waste would drop from the balcony outside the castle, and the sanitation workers were responsible for cleaning these areas inside and out. There is no such thing as a cesspit assassin in Baron Castle. Nearby villagers and night patrol guards can easily see the outer walls. Assassins climbing up have no footholds, and even with tools like climbing spikes, it would be very slow and quickly noticed. Only the high nobles might encounter this, because their castles are more complex. To look nice and not covered in filth, they build an extra wall behind the main fortress walls. Most guards don't want to patrol the hidden spaces inside because they are full of foul-smelling waste. This is how cesspit assassins operate. They climb through the cracks between two walls, giving the nobles a disgusting surprise. Below the kitchen, the basement is usually a prison. They do this to prevent prisoners from freezing to death and losing their ransom. On the other side of the banquet hall, the first floor is the dining room, where nobles eat daily. Above that is the council chamber. In the kind-hearted Cantor Castle's council room, Gonzalo earned 500 gold coins. The top floor is usually a study or library, the highest and safest place with good light. That is Gonzalo's target. By this time, they had already killed several cult patrols, and fighting sounds outside grew louder. They no longer sneaked but charged up the stairs directly. Gonzalo's silver armor was nearly invincible here. In the tight space, he used Aaliyah's magic iron sword, stabbing straight to the heart. The small space made swinging blunt weapons impossible. Plate armor was unbeatable, if you didn't get stuck. The two iron cans fought their way up, leaving bodies on the stairs, reaching the top floor. The top door hadn't been broken yet, which was a miracle. It had no handle, just like a treasure vault door. Gonzalo searched for a long time, but couldn't find the mechanism. He tried to break it open violently, but failed. Such a pity. If I interrogated Aaliyah, he'd tell me where the mechanism is. That way, the treasure would be mine. Just then, a female voice came from inside the door. Gonzalo? Lilith? The door slowly opened. Lilith and her maid had been inside all day. Since yesterday morning, Lilith had followed her father into the castle. Aaliyah couldn't wait to show off his family heirloom to his fiancée. Until chaos broke out in the castle, Lilith had already memorized the location of the mechanism and hid inside the Osier family treasury. Lilith is indeed very beautiful. Otherwise, the noblemen from nearby barony lands wouldn't all be chasing her. She has long, wavy blonde hair with air bangs, and her silver-gray eyes sparkle like stars in the sky. She also has two cute dimples. However, her clothes are a bit messy, probably because she fled in a hurry. She tightly hugs a delicate jewelry box. As a noble, Gonzalo could tell that this wasn't the family treasure but Lilith's dowry, likely filled with gold coins and precious jewelry. Gonzalo knew that if he stole her dowry, it would be very hard for a girl from a noble family to find another husband. The family wouldn't give her more dowry, and some girls might even consider suicide. Gonzalo also understood that a relationship between him and Lilith was impossible. She didn't want to go to frontier lands. She wanted to become the Baroness of Matsuyama. It didn't matter who the Baron was. Lilith pointed in a direction. The two people she knew since childhood understood each other's meaning immediately. They used a long sword to break open the stone floor, revealing a rectangular iron chest. Gonzalo and Lair worked together to lift the chest. Inside was the wealth accumulated by the Osier family. Gonzalo took a quick look. There was a lot of stuff, some large items like gold candlestick lamps, probably stolen from Baron Odo. The Baron couldn't afford these items and couldn't display them in the castle. Sadly, there were no magical items. Now wasn't the time to hesitate. There was a fight outside, and they had to move the chest to their camp quickly. Lair wasn't strong enough to survive alone in the chaotic environment downstairs. I'll go call some people. Lair, you stay here and protect Lilith's safety, and also the safety of the treasure, Gonzalo silently thought. I will protect Miss Lilith just like I protect my wife, Amy. Even if it costs my life, Lair promised firmly. Come back safely, Gonzalo. I'll be waiting for you, Lilith said, walking up to Gonzalo and giving him a deep kiss. Without lingering, she put on her silver armor helmet, activated her transformation mode, and rushed downstairs. As she went down, she found that there were no more cultists on the stairs, only bodies scattered all over. All the cult members ran outside the main hall to fight. They knew that if the outer wall gate was taken, everything would be lost. Some even tried to jump from the wall, risking broken legs to escape. The view through the helmet's observation hole was not very clear. Gonzalo felt like something was calling him. After knocking down 2 cult members, he looked around and finally saw what was wrong. On the gallows outside, Father Rory was nailed to the cross, covered in blood. He was completely red and silent. At this moment, a cult member climbed onto the gallows, trying to cut off Father Rory's head to escape. Holding the head, this cult member could be promoted to priest. Seeing the situation was hopeless, the cult members were only thinking about how to escape for their own benefit. Gonzalo's life was saved by Father Rory, who always carried a special healing potion. In an emergency, it could be sold for a good price or used to save himself. The treasure vault door was safe, and the chest inside wouldn't run away. Gonzalo cut down the cross, and the nearby cult members had already fled, knowing that anyone who saw Gonzalo in a tin can outfit would run to stay alive. He removed the nails and helped Father Rory up. In the dark night, Gonzalo finally saw why Father Rory couldn't speak. His mouth was sewn shut. Gonzalo took a dagger and carefully cut it open. Name: Rory, level 2. Age: 63, strength 5, knowledge 15, strategy 3, management 8, military 1, spirit 5.7, traits none, favorability 80. Gonzalo understood the panel better now. Father Rory was barely alive, but his strength was still 5. This showed that regardless of his condition, the attributes displayed the highest value. For non-subordinates, the panel shows favorability, not loyalty. When Gonzalo saw Elijah, his favorability was -100. Special potion. Father Rory was almost unconscious, pointing at the door. Gonzalo looked toward the main gate and realized the special potion was on the red-robed priest at the door. He then moved Father Rory to a safe place and rushed toward the chaos at the gate, where many of Baron Raymond's soldiers had already entered. Gonzalo saw his 15 iron cans and quickly ordered everyone to rush to the castle. They needed to move the treasure chest before the main force arrived. He felt around the corpse in the red robe and found a tube of green potion. Gonzalo drank it, feeling familiar. The test tube was very sturdy, and even with many people stepping on it, it remained intact. Item name: Special Healing Potion, Quality, Green, Item Info, made by Father Rory of the Light Church. Restores all external wounds, has a significant effect on internal injuries, restores vitality, but is ineffective against poisoning, magical injuries, or diseases. This potion is almost invincible on the battlefield, a perfect remedy for external injuries. Unfortunately, it doesn't work against poison or diseases. If it did, Father Lori wouldn't sell it for just 100 gold coins. That price is quite fair. Gonzalo quickly gave the potion to Father Lori. Finally, Father Lori could speak again. Thank you, Gonzalo. You are a very talented child. This sentence made Gonzalo realize why he felt someone calling him. It was because Gonzalo had 2 points of mental strength and sensed Father Lori's call for help through his mind, since his mouth was sewn shut and he couldn't speak. It's a pity. I have to become a pioneer knight to expand my family's legacy, so I can't join the church, Father Lori said regretfully. Still, he kept urging Gonzalo to join the church. The priests of the Light Church are incredibly resilient. In the end, Father Lori couldn't persuade Gonzalo. Instead, he suggested Gonzalo stay a few more days in Songshua territory. Father Lori could teach him some useful knowledge, especially things that would help him lead explorations. What could Gonzalo do? Father Lori offered an irresistible deal. In this era, knowledge is the most valuable thing. At this moment, Baron Raymond also entered the outer courtyard. The night attack was coming to an end. The final part was the most troublesome, chasing the escaped cultists to prevent them from causing more harm to the barony. Even though Raymond had prepared many troops outside the castle to stop the cultists, these rats were very good at escaping. Finally, they sent cavalry to the edge of Songshua territory to guard against any other possible cultist armies. At dawn, the outside of the castle was crowded with cultists and captured peasants. The enemy slaves didn't need to be judged. They simply became part of the spoils of war. Aaliyah was the first to be judged. He was tied up and kneeling on the ground, his eyes blind and his mouth trembling as he kept reciting words. I am Baron Songshua. I will pay the ransom. Don't kill me. Baron Raymond stood up, raising his sharp iron sword. Say your heresy. Did Otto kill you? It wasn't me. It was Priest Everett. Aaliyah now knew he was going to die. He kept hitting his face on the ground and begging for mercy. He cut off Aaliyah's head, Father Lori added from the bench. Yesterday, he saw Aaliyah cut off his brother's head on the pyre, trying to force the knight to admit that he was Baron Songshua. Patricide. According to the kingdom's law, death penalty. Turning to evil gods. According to church law, death penalty. I, Baron Raymond Garcia, declare you guilty, Baron Raymond. I can pay the ransom. Blood suddenly burst out as Aaliyah's head was lifted high. Gonzalo watched with regret. The ransom was gone. Who is Aaliyah's closest male relative? Baron Raymond shouted outside. Porter crouched at the corner of the outer yard. Hearing this, he scrambled and shouted excitedly. It's me. I am the 4th son of Baron Otto. Porter almost jumped with joy. Such great luck had fallen on him. He was born to a maid and had no inheritance rights. His current role was a farmhand at a manor owned by the Songshua lord, far from the castle's water supply, and he had not been poisoned by blood toxins. But Aaliyah forgot about him. Or rather, Aaliyah never considered him a brother, so he didn't kill him. Baron Otto only has 3 sons. Where did this 4th son come from? Baron Raymond frowned. He knew well how many children neighbors had. My mother is a maid, sir, Porter begged. His fate might depend on Baron Raymond's words. Would he be respected as a noble lord every day, or continue to serve the lord by caring for horses? It all depended on what Baron Raymond said now. That's called a bastard child, Baron Raymond corrected. As a noble, he protected rules to defend his own interests. Yes, I am a bastard, Lord Baron. Porter knelt and kept kowtowing. He longed to be a noble lord so badly. Baron Raymond refused to accept this. There were many people kneeling to him every day on his land. He looked through the family tree of the Osier family, but none of it satisfied him. Lord Baron Potter, remember to pay your ransom to me. When Baron Raymond said this, he seemed to hear the call of the light god, and he cried happily. As for the ransom, just squeeze the Snowy Pine territory hard for 2 years, and it will be paid. Nobles often do this, so just follow their example. His half-brother, also an illegitimate child, was curled up in a corner filled with horse manure, clutching straw tightly, grinding his teeth with a loud noise, and wishing he had been born earlier. According to the kingdom's inheritance law, Snowy Pine should be inherited by the closest relatives of the Osier family, excluding illegitimate children. Snowy Pine is next to Brighton territory. Baron Raymond needs a obedient neighbor, not a noble who suddenly returned from nowhere. As for Baron Potter's identity, it's easy to handle. Nobles are very skilled at these tricks, bribing priests and forging proof of Baron Potter's mother remarrying Baron Otto. Gonzalo learned today that there are many ways to do this. He was worried that if Elijah died, he wouldn't get the ransom, but it seems he was overthinking. The second person to be judged was Knight Hans. He had blank eyes, said nothing, and lowered his head. It was as if he had lost everything: faith, family, his warhorse, his sword. Even breathing felt like a torment. Name: Hans. Level: 2. Age: 38. Bravery: 8. Knowledge: 2. Strategy: 1. Management: 2. Military: 5. Spirit: 0. Traits: none. Favorability: 30. Gonzalo was surprised. It was the first time he saw a prisoner with 30 favorability. Usually, cultists had -100 favorability towards Gonzalo, and the captured peasants ranged from -10 to -50. This showed that this person held no resentment towards Gonzalo at all. Could it be that he didn't resent Gonzalo for killing his lord? Tell me your crime, Knight Hans, Baron Raymond said regretfully. They had once served in the same army, but they were not comrades. I am guilty, Knight Hans answered with a hollow gaze. Your crime? Baron Raymond asked. Knight Hans raised his chained hands above his head, his arms trembling slightly. Many knights present understood what this gesture meant. He was choosing to end his own life, a knight's way to clear his shame. The problem with Knight Hans was whether he was judged a heretic. On the battlefield, losing and paying a fine was acceptable, but turning to worship evil gods was an unforgivable sin. Hans's crimes were helping heretics fight and possibly converting to evil gods. At this moment, the most important person spoke. Father Rory sat in a chair, still too weak to stand, and addressed everyone. Knight Hans was forced by Elijah and heretic priests. I saw this myself. But helping heretics fight is a crime. Baron Raymond whispered with Father Rory, then announced the verdict. I, Baron Raymond Garcia, declare that Knight Hans must serve the church for 10 years and pay a ransom to me. Baron Potter, do you agree with this decision? Raymond asked, turning to the man behind him. Yes, yes. Potter, who was kneeling on the ground and still confused, quickly agreed when he heard Raymond. Now he knew who was behind everything and obediently listened, like an honest child. Gonzalo understood the key reason here. Hans was still part of the Ossel family, so he needed Potter's approval. Usually, a noble knight's lord would defend him or exchange favors to reduce his punishment and pay his ransom. After these two knights were judged, the other barons' knights did not help heretics fight. They, along with the barons, were imprisoned in the cellar below the kitchen. Only heretics and peasants remained, but slaves were not included. Now it was Father Rory's turn to act. He also called nearby priests to come to the castle and help him judge. It's amazing how resilient the priests of the Church of Light are. Yesterday, they were nailed to crosses, whipped, and kept hanging all day, with their mouths sewn shut. Today, they could sit in chairs and judge heretics. Gonzalo followed Baron Raymond into the main castle building, where 6 barons were still waiting in the banquet hall. Everyone, it's time to discuss your ransom, Baron Raymond said with a big smile, as if he had become several years younger. The barons began to curse, argue, and smash cups, but it was all useless. Their hands and feet were chained, and they couldn't compare to Raymond, who wore armor and commanded an army. They were now prisoners, just prisoners of Raymond, having been captured from Elijah. Otherwise, why attack the castle at night? They could just wait for the cult members to torture and kill the 6 of them. No one would come to save them. Their sons, who didn't attend the wedding, secretly hoped these 6 barons would die. If they sent soldiers to rescue them, it would just be a waste of time, and they might even pray for their father to die in the castle prison. Raymond's knights and elite soldiers, if they started a war, would demand higher pay. After the battle, they would share the spoils based on their contributions. All of this would cost a lot of money. Gonzalo saw only pointless arguing. He knew it was just a way to negotiate. In the end, they would settle on a ransom amount and wait for their families to send gold to free them. Feeling bored with the arguing, Gonzalo walked upstairs, still able to hear the cheerful laughter of men and women. These noble families had no real worries. The baron would eventually pay the ransom. As nobles, they didn't need to live in tents or outside. Raymond would give them the dignity of living in the castle's main rooms. Maybe tonight, the nobles would hold another feast. Since so many people had come, they ordered servants to bring food to the castle of Songshua. The noble ladies, young masters, and young ladies could sing, dance, and enjoy themselves. Many of these people Gonzalo knew since childhood. Following the idea that more friends mean more options, he went to talk to them. Now, Gonzalo was their idol. If Gonzalo hadn't gone to expand his territory, the unmarried young ladies would have started discussing with their families whether they could add a little more dowry to marry Raymond. Both the Baron and the young ladies liked handsome noblemen with black hair and fair skin, who could win battles and lead night raids. They were better than children who only wanted to fight duels every day. This war, in the next 100 years, will be talked about by all the nobles, free citizens, and serfs around Songshua. Some will even sing stories about it, like minstrels sharing tales. They will tell of Baron Raymond leading his army to defeat the evil cult army, saving 6 barons and a priest. They will also talk about his son Gonzalo defeating his traitorous brother Elijah and the night raid on the castle. There's also the story of Porter, who went from a stable boy to a baron by luck. Gonzalo went to the top living room, where only Lolita and his personal maid were present. The maid wisely left. Now, only they are left. Gonzalo, I don't like that stable boy, Lolita said with red eyes and a sad voice. She wasn't crying over marriage, but because of her father, the kind old Baron Kent, who had passed away. To young nobles, those who grew up attending parties and receiving education are considered their peers. Porter, even if dressed in fine wool clothes, still carried the smell of horse manure all over him, which made Lolita feel sick. Lolita knew that in the future, at parties, Baron Porter would embarrass himself because he didn't know proper manners, and as his wife, Lolita would also be laughed at. Gonzalo hugged Lolita to comfort her. At least you became a baroness. You can teach her how to be a good noble lady. And you don't want to expand the territory, right? Lolita held Gonzalo's neck and kissed him. Her golden hair smelled sweet and soft. At least, I loved someone, Lolita said firmly. They tangled together, starting the most natural kind of springtime intimacy. In the end, Lolita didn't go with Gonzalo to expand the territory. Her noble life since childhood made it hard for her to survive in new lands. And compared to a knight's wife, a baroness was a different class. Nobles knew that a stable, long-lasting life was more important than fleeting pleasure. The chance of success in expanding the territory was only 1 in 10. Lolita couldn't take that risk. She loved her position as a baroness more. A girl's youth is precious. In a few years, even with a dowry, no noble young man would want her. She'd have to find an older noble. Baron Porter was a good man. In noble circles, cuckoldry was quite common. Gonzalo had already forgiven Baron Porter. Songshua territory, Castle Baron Raymond and the 6 barons had already agreed on the ransom. Now, including Baron Raymond, everyone was happily celebrating at the castle. Baron Potter, as the host, paid for the banquet. All the treasures were taken away, but it's okay to borrow money from the barons. Potter believes he can squeeze it out of the serfs within 2 or 3 years. Outside the castle, a long line formed. The slaves, whipped and driven, were headed to Brighton's territory. These were all spoils taken by Baron Raymond. Nearby, Gonzalo's expedition camp was already set up. 15 knights and Gonzalo himself, along with young Martin, were inside the main tent. As the leader, Gonzalo's first task after the battle was to reward his men. Rewards had to be given quickly, based on their achievements. In Gonzalo's past, delays in rewarding soldiers often led to mutinies. Even though he could see loyalty levels on his interface, Gonzalo wouldn't act recklessly. It's simple. If soldiers see high loyalty now, but feel discontent at night, they might turn against him. Such things are possible. There were 15 sets of new plate armor, each worth 20 gold coins. Used armor would be cheaper, and damaged armor even less. This was just armor. A knight or elite soldier needed armor, padded cotton underarmor, a sword or hammer, a dagger, a bow and arrows, a shield, 2 to 3 horses with tack, and 2 to 5 knights or attendants. Gonzalo bought all this from his father, Baron Raymond, using his battle achievements. The total cost was 300 gold coins, which was the limit Gonzalo could get. Baron Raymond had demanded a ransom of 500 gold coins from each baron. With 6 barons plus Potter, that totaled 3,500 gold coins. This was the biggest profit from the battle. The money wouldn't be received immediately. Most of it would be paid over 2 to 3 years through item collateral. Baron Raymond also needed to support 3 real knights, over 10 cavalrymen, elite soldiers, 30 archers, his 2 sons' branches, and other family members. All these expenses added up. Getting armor worth 300 gold coins was already good. Baron Raymond had given Gonzalo an entire expedition force, which caused a deficit for Brighton's lord. Now, these resources were needed to fill that gap. Gonzalo thought it was better to spend money on improving his troops' fighting ability rather than just giving gold. The new armor reward was expensive, but Gonzalo believed it was worth it. So young Gonzalo decided that the 15 knight apprentices would buy their armor in installments based on their future achievements in battle. They had the right to use the armor, but to truly own it, they had to fight for young Gonzalo. They had the right to use the armor, but to truly own it, they had to fight for young Gonzalo. Gonzalo was generous, but giving so much at once might reduce their motivation to improve. Therefore, paying in parts suited the current situation well. The 15 apprentices received their plate armor, and all of them showed genuine happiness. They touched the armor as if they were touching a young girl's skin. Arlie wore the armor and found it fit perfectly. He thought it would look funny, but it fit so well that he realized Gonzalo had specially chosen it for him. Arlie remembered this detail deeply. Similarly, Lear was worried about growing taller. He was only 17 and had noticed he was still growing. He feared that if the armor was too expensive, he might outgrow it and regret not having it. But when he put it on, he felt there was plenty of space, and his worries eased. Gonzalo's armor for Lear was made taller based on his mother's height. His mother was a tall female slave. In this era, tall women weren't considered good, especially for slaves. Only a stable worker might be interested in such a woman. Gonzalo's steward gave little Martin gold coins and books. Martin wasn't very interested in war. He simply obeyed Gonzalo. They had grown up together and knew each other well. The books were taken from the Songshua castle. Baron Raymond wouldn't let Gonzalo take books to expand his territory, so Gonzalo had to find these items himself. As for weapons, each person received a long sword and a shield. All were second-hand, and these weren't gifts, they belonged to Gonzalo. The camp's warehouse also stored bows and arrows, which were Gonzalo's property. They weren't very skilled with bows yet, and needed more practice. While the 15 apprentices were still happily trying on their armor, Gonzalo spoke. "Get ready to assemble." Everyone quickly hid their smiles and rushed out of the tents, organizing small teams to gather the expedition. Gonzalo was very pleased with how disciplined the 15 apprentices were. 15 knights' aides stood in a line, each behind a small group of 20 people, forming a square formation of 300 soldiers. Gonzalo examined the formation. It was neat and well organized. He loudly shouted, "All team leaders, start counting." All 15 knights' aides shouted together, 1. Then the civilians behind them called out, 2, 3, 20. After hearing 20, the aides moved 1 step to the right, then ran to the back of the line, and ran back to the front, continuing to shout, "Report, 20 people counted. All 20 present. Form the line," Gonzalo ordered. Everyone began to move, spacing themselves 1 meter apart. With each person about 45 centimeters wide at the shoulders, the square formation measuring 20 meters wide and 28 meters long appeared. Gonzalo held a list, which had been checked by little Martin and the aides. "Runaway on the battlefield, step forward," Gonzalo commanded sternly. The aides turned around and shouted, "Group leader, step forward to confirm the runaways." It was nearly impossible for the aides to fight and verify the 20 people at the same time on the battlefield. So, each group of 20 was divided into 4 team leaders, with 5 people per group. The aides also served as team leaders. They quickly confirmed the number of runaways, 15 in total, mostly slaves. These settlers were trained temporarily by Gonzalo and the aides at the end of winter. Being able to form a proper formation was already quite good. But on the battlefield, some still ran away. Since they chose to escape, they had to pay the price. Runaways, the team leader will whip 10 times. The group leader, 20 times. Each runaway, 50 times. Next time someone escapes, Execute them immediately. Team leaders and group leaders, double the whipping, Gonzalo ordered. Rewards and punishments go hand in hand. Military discipline is like that. Gonzalo initially planned to make an example of them, but seeing that these people knew they would be punished and still kept their formation intact, he let them go. The group leaders began whipping the runaways, while the team leaders whipped the group leaders, and the aides, as team leaders, whipped themselves. The aides whipped themselves more harshly. Gonzalo continued reading from his paper. Those who have contributed to defeating the enemy. Lair killed 1 soldier. Yalak killed 12. Yalak killed 5. The list included everyone from the knight captains to the slaves. Kill 1 soldier to earn 5 silver coins. Kill 1 armed farmer to earn 5 pounds of meat. Gonzalo organized his troops into groups of 5. The team leader checked the members, and the leader of the team checked the team leader. Behind them, Little Martin and others watched to see if anyone tried to escape or earn battle credits. Since Martin could count and write, and cutting off ears was not a practical way to record achievements on the real battlefield, they didn't use that method. In the entire continent of Atlantis, there was no system of paying soldiers based on the number of enemies they killed. Instead, they shared the spoils of war. The common people fought for their lord out of duty. If Gonzalo hadn't seized the Osier family's treasures, he wouldn't have been able to pay such rewards. At most, he would give some meat. There was no money for rewards otherwise. The 300 soldiers consumed food every day, all paid for by Gonzalo's money. The real elite soldiers on the other side, only Lair, by luck, managed to kill 1 enemy. Most of the others were killed by Baron Raymond's skilled archers and cavalry. As they grow stronger, they will kill more enemies. For now, the rewards are set low, but in the future, they won't be reduced. Rewards will only increase. Gonzalo believes that generous rewards will motivate brave fighters. As battles increase, the rewards will become richer. The common people see enemies as delicious bread, drooling with greed. Gonzalo sat in his chair, personally handing out meat. Everyone who came to receive their share respectfully said, "Thank you, young Master Gonzalo." There was also a list of casualties. Gonzalo, injured himself, checked the list and rewarded food. Because the cult priest fled early, the enemy army collapsed quickly. The capable Ilias only saw Gonzalo, having never fought anyone else. Knight Hans was just pretending to fight and didn't kill anyone, so our side had 0 deaths in the first battle. In the second night raid, there were also no casualties. Everyone wore iron armor, and Luke the Knight protected them. To the cultists, this was a crushing defeat. A San, a Si, and a Lu watched Ada happily take out meat and eat a bite, drooling with greed. They were slaves, brothers from different mothers, all chosen by Lord Gonzalo. They could speak human language. Slaves are given names so randomly that most have no names at all. These few slaves were bred by Baron Raymond, chosen from the strongest in the territory he selected. He married dozens of wives, and the slaves raised this way tend to be quite strong. Baron Raymond also gave some slaves to Gonzalo, and these brothers are among them. Big A, thanks to his genetic advantages, had never eaten well before, but he managed to kill an armed farmer and received a reward from young Master Gonzalo. They are gathering firewood in the woods. These woods, animals, fruits, and fish belong to the noble lords. They dare not cut down trees, so they only pick up fallen branches. Gonzalo also ordered them to follow the rules. He doesn't want conflicts to happen just because some settlers caught fish in the river near the Lord's land. Even in the now ungoverned snowy territory, it's not allowed. To make these settlers get used to obeying orders, young Master Gonzalo says what to do, and they follow. If Gonzalo doesn't say anything, they shouldn't interfere. Later, when they reach Gonzalo's territory, how to encourage the farmer's mindset and develop the economy will be discussed. For now, they must follow the rules in the Valong area. Go back to the camp quickly and eat. As soon as they hear about food, the slaves run faster than anyone. The smell of meat. Alu drools excitedly, having smelled it so much today. Little Martin holds a spoon and taps on a large iron pot, making a loud clang. Each person gets a bowl and a coarse bread. Everyone has one. This is a reward from young Master Gonzalo for your efforts. Alu can't believe his ears. Everyone has one. Am I considered a person now? But while hesitating, he falls behind. Asan reaches the large iron pot first. A san holds a dark brown coarse bread with visible grains and bran bits. It's a food he's never eaten before, and just smelling it, he can already smell the wheat. There's also a bowl of meat soup. A san quickly goes to get it, but little Martin hits him hard on the head with a spoon. He's not angry. He's used to this kind of hit. Speak. A san touches his head, thinking of what to say. Suddenly, he remembers what Big A said when he was rewarded today, and he starts to imitate. Thank you, Lord Little Martin. He thinks this should be fine. As long as he calls him Lord, it should be correct. Little Martin hit a san's head hard with a spoon again, which confused a san. He couldn't understand why calling Lord didn't work anymore. Looking at the hot meat soup in front of him, a san was so anxious he almost cried. The only meat he had ever eaten was earthworms. Alu whispered from behind, Thanks, Lord Gonzalo. Yes. Thanks, Lord Gonzalo. Little Martin handed the meat soup to a san and reminded him, It's thanks to young Master Gonzalo. When we reach the frontier, call him Lord Gonzalo. Do you understand? This was something Gonzalo kept emphasizing to those around him. Rules are rules. Gonzalo, as a noble, was a firm supporter of the feudal system. The real lord, Baron Raymond, was still inside the castle dancing with noble women. The Baroness had passed away many years ago, and Raymond had been flirting with noble women over the years. Smelling the delicious meat, a san shouted loudly, Thanks, young Master Gonzalo. The others behind him started calling out, Hurry up, it's our turn. Only then did a san leave. Nighttime Alu and everyone sat around the campfire, playing a fun game, tossing a cloth. 20 people in a team, passing the cloth to the beat of the captain, Yalak. Whoever catches it last is responsible for guarding the night. They played 10 rounds in total. The person who caught it the most times would be on duty. Gonzalo invented this game. It started in winter with 15 knights and their attendants, to improve their math skills and strengthen their bonds through fun. Now, the team leaders had learned how to play and were playing with the frontier villagers. Alu was having a great time. While playing, he secretly grabbed a piece of coarse bread and threw it into his mouth, quietly counting who caught the cloth the most times today. It's a da caught the most. No, you idiot. It's a C. You're all wrong. Then who caught the most? It's the captain. The captain caught the most, Alu blurted out. Everyone in the team burst into laughter. How could it be the captain? Did they want a beating? Yalak awkwardly smiled. Tossing the cloth was a bit tricky. After a while, he forgot who had caught it earlier. But Yalak was sure it was himself because he had written down the number 4 in front of him. It couldn't be more than that. He just had bad luck. It's just me. If I lose, I lose. I can't cheat just because I'm the leader. Tonight, I will stay on watch. Aliu smiled happily. For the first time in his life, he was so genuinely happy tonight. He drank meat broth, ate coarse bread, and played games with everyone. He didn't see his father often. He only saw him once from afar while moving wood in a distant village. The man was tall and looked like a slave. They said he was Aliu's father. Every time Aliu corrected the foreman about the wrong amount of wood, he would be whipped. Later, Aliu stopped caring. He understood that the Lord's things had nothing to do with him. Only when his mother asked if the wood count was correct did Aliu tell her where the mistake was, because he was afraid she would be whipped. Today, Aliu could loudly say who passed the cloth the most. He truly saw everyone as family. 15 campfires were lit in the expansion camp. Everyone clapped and sang silly songs they didn't understand. The fire flickered in their eyes, tears warm and flowing amid laughter. At this moment, they held hands, singing and dancing happily. Far from here, inside the castle, a banquet with candlelight and flickering lamps was happening. People flattered and complimented each other with fake smiles, creating a sharp contrast. Inside the tent, Gonzalo and Little Martin counted gold coins and valuables. Everything had to be recorded on paper, including rewards. It was important to keep track so they could compare later, who got less, who got more, and make up for it. Loot and treasures had to be carefully recorded to prevent theft. Thieves didn't steal so much at once, but if they took a little each time and it wasn't recorded, it would be impossible to notice. Gonzalo now had 678 gold coins. 100 of these were sent by Baron Raymond to Gonzalo's older sister to help with connections. That older sister, who married into the royal city, had a husband who was a declining middle-aged noble. Her dowry was several times larger than Lilith's. Baron Raymond arranged this to expand his influence in the city. He knew that in the future, his two sons would need to explore new lands. It was the Garcia family's mission. He had arranged his sister Mephew's marriage early. Mephew was chosen as a promising candidate for Gonzalo's expansion team. This was her second time using connections, so she was more familiar and confident. This was also the first time Gonzalo, as the youngest son, gained an advantage in status. There is also a gold table lamp broken into two parts, valued at about 50 gold coins. 4 gemstone cups match the 4 male members of the Oser family, with the family crest at the bottom. These need to be cleaned off, each worth 15 gold coins. Additionally, there are small bags of spices like cinnamon and cloves. Under the box, there is even a roll of silk. Separating these items with cloth, that thin roll alone would cost at least 30 gold coins to buy. Gonzalo, as a noble, knows this price is fair. Such items are in high demand. Unfortunately, there is no tea, or Gonzalo would enjoy a taste of his homeland. There are also delicate small items like rings, brooches, and necklaces, all bearing the Oser family crest. These crafts can only be damaged to remove the patterns, which would reduce their value. Including 678 gold coins, the total estimated worth is around 950 gold coins, probably not exceeding 1,000. If it weren't for Baron Odo compensating Gonzalo and Elijah spending money to buy the potion for his promotion tonight, Gonzalo suspects Lilith and her personal guard might have already tampered with this chest. As for the shape-shifting silver armor seized from Elijah, due to its special properties, others wouldn't fit well. It could be sold to Baron Raymond, who might have a magic craftsman reforge it. But that would take too long, and Gonzalo can't wait. He plans to keep it himself and see if he can reforge it after opening the territory. Item name: Iron Magic Sword, 1 courage, quality, green. Item info: standard iron magic sword from the Augustine Kingdom, highly effective against armor. This sword's hilt bears the Oser family crest and is difficult to remove unless the entire hilt is destroyed. It can only be used as a trophy for now. When Baron Potter has enough money, Gonzalo can buy it back. Item name: Blood Necklace, quality, green. Item info: a magical item made by the Blood Brotherhood of the cult, temporarily charms humans. Long-term, where causes loss of reason. This necklace cannot be sold openly. If sold on the black market, it would attract the attention of the Church of Light. Many think black markets sell everything, but in reality, the owners behind these markets are often nobles or even church bishops. The black market mainly helps nobles sell stolen goods discreetly. This does not include cult items. As for the serfs and cult members who stole the noble lord's belongings and planned to sell them on the black market, it seems you're eager to have your head displayed on a stick at the city gate. After counting the valuables and making notes, Gonzalo sat tiredly at the table and continued giving instructions to little Martin. Help me record the information of each settler, using this format. The notebook on the table had entries: name, gender, age, special skills. I know they probably don't know much, so ask plenty of questions when you record. Even if they can fish, pick mushrooms, learn to call chickens, or bark like dogs, write down their skills. It might be tiring, so I'll have a servant help you. Thank you for your hard work, little Martin. Young master, I'm not tired. It's just my duty. I know I'm not as capable as my older brother, Big Martin. I just need to work harder, little Martin said with a small smile. How about waiting until the settlement is stable, and I find you a wife? Gonzalo said with a playful smile. No, that won't do. You're not married yet, young master. How can I marry first? That wouldn't be proper. Little Martin quickly shook his head in refusal. Don't worry. When we get there, my word is the law, Gonzalo corrected him. Little Martin looked down, a bit shy. They had grown up together, yet now he was feeling shy again. I want something bigger, little Martin said, lowering his head even more. The man understood immediately. Gonzalo threw a silver cup at him, hitting his head. Go get some sleep. I've got that noted. After little Martin left, Gonzalo spread out a sheepskin map and planned his next route. His destination was the southeastern part of the August Kingdom, starting from the northwest of Valon province, heading to the free port in the southeast, then sailing south from there, stopping at 3 ports for supplies. Each port's output and local prices were detailed here. These were information sent by his older sister, Meph, from the capital. The capital's information channels were much better than those of the barons in Valong's corners. Without this data, he would be completely in the dark outside Valong, relying only on family notes that contained outdated information from 100 years ago. This way, you can plan carefully and decide which supplies are unnecessary to bring. You can buy them locally, often at lower prices, since Brighton is not as busy with trade as port cities. Then, you will disembark at Sunrise Port in the Yalon province, heading south through the Fairmont Mountains. It is important to note that most of the Fairmont Mountains are controlled by first-generation barons, who became barons after being knights, not through inheritance. These areas often have unrest, with rebels, bandits, and even bandit nobles. Since most barons are first-generation, their succession is unstable. When a baron dies, distant relatives may come to inherit, but they are unfamiliar with local conditions and may die too. Without a stable lord, many peasants become semi-bandits. There are detailed records about the lords of the Fairmont Mountains, including when they were granted titles, family histories, hobbies, and local specialties. This helps prevent misunderstandings later. Nobles strongly dislike neighbors producing and selling the same products. For example, if I produce fruitwood wine, my neighbor should not sell it. They can produce and sell grape wine, but not fruitwood wine, or I might go to war. At the southern end of the Fairmont Mountains, you will see Mount Manroland, which marks the start of Gonzalo's designated frontier. The map shows that south of Mount Manroland is a plain where 3 pioneering knights have died. Goblins and other monsters, even magical beasts, live on this plain. The area around Mount Manroland and the southern plain is Gonzalo's frontier territory. Further south of the plain is a desolate swamp, which extends all the way to the Thorn Coast. This area is Gonzalo's reserve land. Paying a fee to buy the rights to develop these lands for the next 10 years is common in the kingdom. Since pioneering knights don't pay taxes for 3 years, and if they die, new knights must come, which means the land often remains untaxed. Buying development rights is more practical. This means that for the next 10 years, the desolate swamp and Thorn Coast will not have any pioneering knights coming to develop them. Otherwise, spending 400 gold coins would only benefit Mount Manroland and the southern plain. Normally, it takes 10 years for a pioneering knight to find enough mineral resources to break even. Gonzalo's main goal is to develop the desolate swamp and Thorn Coast. Most of the geography there is unmarked, but it is known to have abundant rainfall year-round and no snow in winter. Gonzalo plans to grow rice in the desolate swamp. In this era, the lords surprisingly did not know what rice was. Even the barons of the Mont Mountain area only grew wheat. According to the books collected by the Garcia family, there are records about rice. The ancestors of the Garcia family saw this plant during their travels when they visited the foreign land of Java. Outside the Thistle Coast, not far from the sea, there are islands where the Javanese people live. Because of this, the fleet dared not approach these waters, so Gonzalo could only travel from the Fairmont Mountains to Mount Manroland. The Javanese believe in the sea god and think their people are favored by the ocean. They do not allow any ships to sail on the sea, and if they see a ship, they attack it together. These Javanese are also very ignorant, believing that the continent of Atlantis is the land of evil gods, and they often attack the coastlines. Anyway, Gonzalo arrived at Mount Manroland, first establishing himself there, developing the mountain and the southern plains, and then gradually expanding. In his previous life, Gonzalo, as a local leader, knew that food was the most important resource for development in feudal times. When choosing to explore the territory, he focused on the south, not the north. The north, except for black soil, generally produces little food, and the places with black soil are not accessible to Gonzalo. He remembered that in winter, when he hosted officials from a northern region, they were surprised that trees there did not lose their leaves in winter. That was the difference between north and south. In feudal society, northern food production was a disaster for modern people. Even with advanced technology like greenhouse farming, it is unrealistic to develop the northern lands into a large-scale, powerful area because of the limited land size and climate conditions, unless the divine kingdom of the Bright Lord happened to be there. Whether pursuing a knightly, magical elite route or industrialization with widespread firearms, Talent is needed in all areas. A large population base is essential to produce more talent, which then can be selected through Gonzalo's system, eventually forming a large, well-organized structure. This is why Gonzalo chose the southern part of the Atlantis continent. Just having a winter without snow already puts him ahead. Meanwhile, in Brighton, winter slaves and serfs die from the cold every year. Of course, these are all later stories. For now, the most important thing is to focus on the current situation. The Blood Brothers cult in southeastern Valia is causing chaos. To reach Freeport, you must cross a war zone or head south to leave the Valia region and find a port to sail from. All decisions depend on the letter Count Terence will send to Baron Raymond. Until then, I cannot act. So, I've been busy these days. After handling everything, Gonzalo didn't plan to go to the castle banquet hall. He's known these nobles since childhood, and socializing with them doesn't bring any real benefit. If he could meet some new nobles, Gonzalo would be happy to attend those banquets. The snowy mountain, the castle, and the ongoing trial of the cult members continue. Father Rory can now walk, and Gonzalo helps him inside the castle from the outer courtyard. Gonzalo, you are a good boy and very talented. You shouldn't waste your gifts, Father Rory said sincerely. Here he goes again. Father Rory has said this several times today. Honestly, Gonzalo doesn't dislike the church. In his past life, as an atheist, he believed in practicality. People only trust you if you are useful. If you're not, no one cares about you. This world has recorded miracles, magic, and divine powers. Gonzalo has seen all of these with his own eyes. Gonzalo just keeps helping him silently, choosing to stay quiet and pretend to be indifferent. Until there are real benefits, Gonzalo decides not to speak. Father Rory seems to understand Gonzalo's feelings. Having dealt with nobles for many years, he knows what they want. The church is no longer as strong as it was 1,000 years ago. After 2 religious revolutions, the church's control over the land has weakened. Many mages now serve powerful nobles and try to influence church rule. You mentioned the recent rebellion of the southeastern cult in Valia, which lasted from last summer to winter. Why did Lord Count Terence only issue a call to action now? Gonzalo's heart skipped a beat. This isn't a topic he should discuss. Father Rory initially supported Count Terence, but perhaps he's become numb from being whipped by cult priests and is now disappointed in these nobles. In Gonzalo's memory, Father Rory and Baron Cant are both kind-hearted people. Maybe the Count has his own reasons. Father Rory, you called me here, but I don't think we're here to discuss these matters, Gonzalo said. Father Rory realized he had spoken out of turn. He cleared his throat awkwardly and continued. You mentioned that your pioneering territory is in the Fairmont Mountains, mostly inhabited by noblemen, and there are hardly any churches there. Now I am 63 years old. I started serving as a pastor at 16, was promoted to priest after 8 years, and I have been in this position for 39 years. Gonzalo, as a noble, immediately understood that Father Rory wanted to advance. Father, you're joking. I am just the second son of a baron. How could I help with such matters? Father Rory led Gonzalo into a room with no one else around. After making sure they were alone, he continued. Purple Dawn Divine Arrow, Asi Garcia. According to church records, you also have mental power and can cast spells. I saw this in a rare book in the church library, so I've been saying, you are a talented child. Gonzalo suddenly understood. He thought that Father Rory wanted him to join the church as a knight or priest after discovering his mental power. But it turned out he knew the logic behind the appearance of the purple glow. Don't worry, child. If I tell anyone about this, it won't benefit me at all. I swear to the light God. Now it's about exchanging benefits. Gonzalo considered Father Rory's age. Nobles, due to long-term fighting, usually live to about 60. Father Rory was already 63. This was a gamble, betting that Father Rory would live longer. When I was young, at 24, I became a priest. Back then, I was proud and looked down on nobles. I wasted years, and only when I grew old did I realize everything depends on relationships. You, young noble children, learn this from a young age. It's only now that I understand. I started attending noble banquets, carrying special healing potions, and making friends with you. Gonzalo nodded in agreement. Nobles do understand much more than commoners. Many families have no inheritance and need to suffer through a lifetime of hardship to learn these lessons. But noble young men and women can read their ancestors' notes in the library for just one night and understand everything. Become my disciple, and I will provide you with a knight and a priest. I will write to the church to seek a special position for you and teach you the healing skills. A knight. Gonzalo was quite interested, especially since he had a status panel where he could see loyalty. A priest was even more useful. Healing magic and medical knowledge would be very helpful in the frontier territory. As for the church controlling the people, that is impossible. In this era, nobles are best at resisting the church. Gonzalo grew up under the influence of his father, Baron Raymond, learning how to negotiate with the church, escape control, and even oppose it. The kingdom's laws already state that nobles must protect the legitimacy of the light church in their territory. As long as they pay the tithes on time, they are fine. For example, Father Lori is now a mediator around the baron's estate. If this were 1,000 years ago, disobedience would mean being burned at the stake, and there would be no need for such negotiations with nobles. Father, I agree, but I want to choose the person myself, Gonzalo said after thinking, holding the priest's hand and nodding. Your choice is allowed, but there can only be one knight, Father Lori replied awkwardly. Today, the Light Church has no military power in most regions, except in the main cities of each province. This is the result of historical compromises. The Church's true strength lies with the Holy See. I, King Augustus of the Vala province, Father Lori, hereby accept Gonzalo Garcia as my disciple. Child, swear to the light God. Gonzalo knelt on one knee, facing the shrine, and made a sincere vow. I, Gonzalo Garcia, in front of the Lord of Light and Father Lori, promise to follow the Benedictine rules. Mentor, under your guidance and authority, I promise to study diligently and show respect. My Lord witnesses this. Amen. Gonzalo placed his hands on the white crystal before the shrine and closed his eyes. In the darkness, a white glow formed tiny pearl-sized particles, gathering in front of Gonzalo. They looked like little spirits dancing around him. Gradually, they began to sing, like a choir in a church, their holy voices rising higher. The scene started to change. Images of the first pope leading humans to fight against elves, the Virgin Mary descending to comfort lost humans, and miracles of the Lord of Light shining over the continent of Atlantis, ultimately driving the elves out. At this moment, the white crystal glow on Gonzalo's hands reached its limit, then suddenly disappeared. Very good, Gonzalo. Your talent surpasses even the proud students of the Holy Academy, said the voice. Gonzalo looked at his status panel, where his spirit had increased from 2.0 to 2.5 in a short time. Father Rory has started teaching Gonzalo about divine magic, which includes healing and illumination spells. There are standard divine spells and light magic. During the Second Religious Reform, the Church stopped focusing only on divine magic. They also studied light magic and even fire spells. At that time, Pope Francis proposed a theory that gods also compete with each other. The Light Church believed that learning more divine spells would help the Lord of Light gain more power. This caused a big explosion in the church. Assassinations, plots, and religious wars broke out across the continent of Atlantis, affecting all human nations. In the end, Pope Francis managed to win, but only through compromises with powerful nobles and within the church itself. The Light Church officially recognized light, fire, and nature magic as lawful magic. However, dark magic, death spells, and blood magic were labeled as evil heresies. After the Second Religious Reform, the Light Church lost its former power and influence. Name, Trick, Level 1, Age, 25, Bravery 1, Knowledge 6, Strategy 0, Management 1, Military 0, Spirit 0.6, Traits None, Favorability 30, Name, Tau, Level 1, Age 8, Bravery 0.3, Knowledge 2, Strategy 0, Management 0, Military 0, Spirit 0.1, Traits None, Favorability 50. Gonzalo looked at the priests in front of him. Their mental strength was very low. Rory Father kept saying Gonzalo had great talent. Take the 8-year-old Page Tao, for example. The priests discovered him early and raised him in the church. After learning at the church and growing older, those with good talent were sent to the church court to study. When they became adults, they returned as church priests. All these people had mental talent of only 0.1. After their first blessing of light magic, it increased by 0.5. To be promoted from priest to priesthood, a second blessing of light magic would add 5 points. Based on Gonzalo's noble knowledge and the panel summary, mental strength can hardly grow through training, except by blessings or magic potions used by mages. So, an ordinary priest who receives the blessing of light has a mental 0.6 stat, while a normal priest who undergoes a second blessing of light has a mental 5.6 stat. Without any mental strength, there is no chance to receive blessings. Gonzalo, who traveled here, started with 2 points of mental strength. As the second son, Baron Raymond had tested the talents of Gonzalo and his older brother Joey. Nobles often choose to become clergy as well. When he was young, Gonzalo's test showed no talent for mental strength. Father Rory, who was very knowledgeable, explained over 10 possible reasons. Gonzalo nodded constantly, agreeing that he might be one of those cases. Gonzalo has already decided. He doesn't want the older ones, the very young who don't even know magic, or those with low favorability. When talking to each priest, Gonzalo only asked one question. Are they willing to explore and expand the territory? It's simple. Forcing someone won't make them happy. No matter how talented he is, if they don't want to go, it won't help. Gonzalo doesn't have time to build loyalty with these people now. He has many other things to do. Arthur has red hair. The villagers, who are mostly serfs, often see him as different. In this era, red hair is often associated with demons. Even though he joined the church at age 8, he was mocked by the altar boys. The Lord of Light says everyone should be protected by the Lord, but Arthur knows that slaves are excluded. Even the popes of past generations have tolerated this. So, Arthur, with his red hair, can only endure the mockery in silence. Arthur's talent is better than that of his peers. Some priests suggested he study at the church's academy, but he was afraid of being bullied and didn't dare go. He read many books and knew well the differences caused by social class. The noble boys at the church probably had talents no worse than his and had read even more. He was afraid of speaking with his awkward rural accent and being laughed at in the toilets. He definitely wouldn't go to the church's seminary. Father Rory explained everything about the church in detail and also shared how he had suffered because of his humble background. This made Arthur even more determined to stay away. When he heard the noble boy say he wanted to explore and expand the territory, Arthur was tempted. He wanted to escape from here, from this hometown where he was often excluded. He imagined that someday, the settlers would respectfully call him Pastor Arthur, instead of the red-haired devil. He felt both hope and fear. He knew from reading many books that the death rate for explorers and knights was very high. He was afraid he might die if he went. Deep inside, he was really timid, but he didn't show it outwardly. Finally, I could only place my hopes on Father Rory. I heard that he plans to arrange a night for Lord Gonzalo. Father Rory has been a priest for nearly 40 years and should consider things more carefully. Name: Arthur. Level 1. Age: 15. Strength: 1.2. Knowledge: 6. Strategy: 1. Management: 2. Military: 0. Spirit: 0.7. Traits: none. Loyalty: 50. Gonzalo asked Arthur if he was willing to explore new lands. Arthur has already received the blessing of light. His initial spirit is 0.2, higher than most priests. Gonzalo chose him mainly because he is only 15 and in good health. Priests mainly use supportive magic and are not very good in combat, so his strength is only 1.2. The same goes for mages. Only noble families can afford to keep mages, and their role on the battlefield is mainly supportive. If priests and mages were truly strong fighters, human nobles would be mostly priests and mages, not knights. The main force on the battlefield is always knights. No other race has been able to resist a full-strength knight army. This is why humans can stand firm on the continent of Atlan. Unfortunately, there are too few knights. Gathering all the barons and above into one army is very difficult. Only in wars that threaten human survival might this be possible. The Vala region has about 50 baron territories. Assuming each family has 3 knights, baron, heir, family knight. That makes about 150 knights. A viscount can support at least 10 knights, and a count about 60. So, the total number of knights in Vala is between 200 and 300. Across the kingdom's 12 provinces, it's clear that a kingdom cannot field an army of over 10,000 knights. After confirming Arthur as a priest, he would become a knight. Father Rory has only one knight to choose from. Gonzalo knew who it was. Before inviting him to join the exploration team, he needed to discuss it with Baron Porter. Name, Potter level, 1 age, 16 bravery, 1.1, knowledge, 0.1, strategy, 0, management, 0, military, 0, spirit, 0 traits, none favorability. -10 Gonzalo is talking with Potter at the negotiation table. Recently, Potter has been eating well and learning to read. Looking at his bravery and knowledge stats increasing, it seems he's making progress. I remember the last time I saw Potter, his favorability was still at 80. It seems Baron Potter has learned something. Gonzalo pats Potter on the shoulder. Potter shivers, clearly a bit scared of Gonzalo. Even with negative favorability, due to Baron Raymond's pressure, Potter can only hide his dissatisfaction deep inside. Baron Potter, the noble world is like this. You need to get used to it. You're so handsome and still young. Becoming a baron at your age, many noble ladies would like to be with you. Gonzalo gives a meaningful smile. When talking to people from different social classes, you need to act appropriately to seem close to them. Potter comes from a common background, mostly dealing with lower-class people who joke around. Being straightforward with him works better. After hearing this, Potter suddenly realizes that in his mind, he only expects to have one wife, and finding a wife is very hard. But now his status has changed. He's a baron. If Gonzalo can flirt with Potter, then Potter can also flirt with other people's wives, right? Name, Potter favorability, 70. After hearing this, Potter's favorability instantly rises. Gonzalo smiles happily. That's more like it. No noble is without a little flirtation. Hopefully, Potter's future sons won't have black hair, and maybe Lolita will drink the Moonfall potion. Gonzalo doesn't mind. It's likely that Potter's noble title will end soon. The simple truth is, Elia never told Potter's family about inheritance. The inheritance of the Ozier family's promotion potion has already stopped. Elia only exchanged the original liquid for a prepared potion. To get more in 10 years, Potter would need to achieve a military victory or buy it from a high noble. A land baron won't become a knight in 10 years. Something will go wrong. Either he will go to war, and non-knights tend to die faster. Buying his status from a high noble is also unlikely. The final result was that Baron Raymond, or Big Brother Guy 2, supported Baron Potter's son, with a promotion potion, making him a vassal of the Garcia family. Baron Potter, who had not received noble education, was still happily immersed in the joy of thinking he understood noble rules. Next, the document to end the relationship with Knight Hans needs to be signed by Baron Potter. I believe Father Laurie has already explained this to you. Since the castle was looted, the loyalty oath of Knight Hans could not be found. Only the document to end the relationship was needed. Baron Potter hesitated. To him, Hans was a hot potato, and he had no money to pay the ransom for Knight Hans. His own appointment order had not yet been issued. If he dared to oppose Father Laurie, he would be branded a heretic when he went out later. Baron Potter understood the stakes clearly. He picked up a pen and awkwardly signed his name on the document to end the relationship. Finally, Gonzalo traded with Baron Potter, buying cattle, horses, grain, and redeeming or purchasing slaves, mostly young adults or families. Gonzalo paid his father, Baron Raymond, 10 gold coins as the ransom for Knight Hans. This price was very cheap. Other barons, who were also knights, paid 500 gold coins for ransom. Because Raymond was his father, Gonzalo could get away with paying less. Outer castle courtyard. Gonzalo looked at Knight Hans kneeling before him. Hans was dressed in plain gray linen, with only a short sword at his waist, tied with a hemp rope. He no longer looked like the armored knight he once was. Hans insisted on swearing loyalty because Gonzalo had punished Elias, the beast, as he deserved. Previously, he had sworn loyalty to the Ozier family, not the regicide. He had considered killing himself, but was given a new life. The document ending the relationship signified that Knight Hans had no more ties to the Ozier family. In the outer courtyard, Baron Raymond, Father Lorry, Baron Potter, and other barons. And their knights who had not yet paid the ransom watched as Gonzalo placed his father's fine iron magic sword on Hans's shoulder, instead of the Osier family's magic sword. Gonzalo Garcia, in front of all witnesses today, I hereby knight Hans as a member of the Garcia family. He was commanded to follow the 6 qualities of a knight: loyalty, courage, honor, humility, justice, and faith. Knight Hans knelt on one knee, his right fist over his heart, and loudly pledged, "I swear, I will bravely face enemies and fight against wrongdoers without hesitation. I will protect those who cannot defend themselves and help those in need. I will never harm women and children and will be loyal to my friends and Lord. In the name of the Lord of Light, I will always fulfill my duties." Name: Hans, level 2. Age: 38. Bravery: 8. Knowledge: 2. Strategy: 1. Management: 2. Military: 5. Spirit: 0. Traits: none. Loyalty: 100. His original goodwill of 30 has now become loyalty at 100. At that moment, a messenger rider entered the outer courtyard and handed a letter to Baron Raymond. Among the nobles watching, there was a wax seal with the Feld family crest belonging to Count Terence, the governor of Valong province. Baron Raymond opened the letter. "It is hereby appointed that Baron Raymond Garcia is to be the commander of the northwest garrison of Valong province, responsible for regional security, capturing heretics, bandits, and unruly civilians to maintain stability. Baron Raymond is exempt from frontline conscription, as is Baron Songshue from conscription duties. In case of large-scale heretic activity, Baron Raymond must cooperate with Nathaniel Boone, the commander of the Western Garrison, and Ethan Crawford, the Northern Garrison commander, to fulfill enemy duties. All other lords and barons must deploy no fewer than 300 troops immediately to support the front lines." Governor of Valong Province, Count Terence Field. After reading the letter aloud, everyone was stunned. Baron Enzo loudly scolded. The marriage between Nathaniel Boone's family and Count Terence's son, and the Boone family, is related to Count Terence through his maternal line. Heretics have been spreading in the southeast since summer. Count Terence only issued the call for troops at the end of winter, and it's now spring here. This clearly is a tactic to drain the southeastern nobles and the church. Baron Enzo, speak carefully, Baron Raymond said seriously, knowing that Father Rory was watching nearby. Since being nailed to the cross by heretics, Father Rory had become disillusioned. He walked back to the main building alone, no longer interfering with the plans of these nobles. Gonzalo sneered at Count Terence's actions. Everyone could see that Terence was deliberately delaying to weaken the southeastern nobles and the church's control. The southeastern region controls the Free Port, which is the wealthiest city in Vala's economy. It is richer than Pisa, the capital of Count Terence's Vala. The Free Port is a key hub for north-south trade along the kingdom's east coast. From the northern port of Eternal Night to the Free Port, then to the southern Sunrise Port. These form the kingdom's 3 main trading ports. Both Eternal Night and Sunrise ports are firmly controlled by powerful nobles, but the Free Port has been jointly managed by Viscount Garrett Randall and over a dozen southeastern barons for hundreds of years. Don't underestimate these small nobles. Many have relatives in the royal capital. Over generations, major nobles have tried to take control of the Free Port, but they were all opposed. Once, it even escalated to a royal trial involving 12 knights in a grand duel. At that time, 6 famous knights from each side fought a life-and-death duel in the capital, watched by the king and nobles. The people of the capital eagerly looked on. In the end, the Southeastern Noble Alliance of Vala won. Now, another big noble has set sights on this place, using even more clever methods. Raymond and the barons began to discuss and finally agreed to pay a ransom first by offering goods or neighboring land as collateral. The barons then went back to gather their heirs and armies. They all believed that sending troops was just a formality. Each arranged for their heirs to lead the soldiers. After all, if the eldest died, there was always the second. They could even survive. Plus, this conscription was voluntary, and all expenses had to be paid by the barons themselves. The most disgusting part was that quelling heretics and peasant rebellions was considered the lowest military achievement, so soldiers gained little benefit from it. The main achievements for human armies were expanding into foreign lands and defending against invaders. Wars between human nations or religious conflicts were far less significant than these. Gonzalo also discussed with his father, Baron Raymond. In the end, Gonzalo decided to follow the army and stop at Reedwater City on the southeastern edge of Vala. He planned to observe the battle. If the war ended, he would head east into the free port. If it dragged on, he would leave Vala and go to other ports by ship. Going to the free port had many advantages. The first was the ships. The free port only docked the best ships of the kingdom, which were fast and reliable. The second reason is the cost advantage. Before setting sail, Gonzalo needs to buy supplies. Since free port trade is well developed here, buying goods is much cheaper. The third reason is relationships. If there is no war, Valong and nearby provinces gather here, making it easy to meet nobles or fellow explorers from the same region. They can build connections, look out for each other on the road, and potentially develop trade between territories in the future. As for earning military honors on the front lines, that's a joke. Gonzalo's family wealth can't handle such risks. With the exemption decree in hand, no one can forcibly conscript Gonzalo. The nobles of the southeastern provinces and Count Trenz have their own troubles. Gonzalo has nothing to do with their disputes. Soon, the barons began to mobilize their armies. The quality of these troops was quite varied. Most were slaves or old and young farmers. Unless noble knights led the army, these barons even considered sending their younger sons who hadn't been promoted yet. Family knights would lead the troops. Most of these armed farmers carried farming tools and grass spears. Only about 20 soldiers acted as protectors for the family heir, and they were the real core of the army. Even Baron Enzo was unwilling to provide grass spears. He tried to imitate Gonzalo's explorers by sharpening cedar sticks into spears, but he didn't learn the key skill: no charcoal roasting. Baron Kent, son of Baron Kant, had to lead personally. His father had died, his sister was married, and the family was struggling. Only he could support the family. Luckily, he already had children, so as long as a true heir existed, the family wouldn't fall apart. Baron Raymond had already returned to Brighton territory to start a new round of troop deployment. The garrison's main job was to maintain regional stability. Unlike regular armies, troop arrangements needed adjustments. Big Brother Guy II was already married and had children. He was the second heir of Brighton territory, responsible for protecting the family legacy. Father Rory was busy writing 2 letters, one to the Bishop of Valong and one to the church. After finishing, he would continue to judge heretics. Gonzalo was not in a hurry. He planned to trade slaves and supplies with Porter first. Once everything was organized, he could set out. Gonzalo arrived at the camp with Pastor Arthur and Knight Hans. First, they assigned the 200 farmers and slaves they brought into the exploration team. Among the new 200 people, the healthy young men were selected and assigned to join the team of 15 knights attendants, including Lael, Jorik, and others, forming a combat unit of 300 soldiers. 10 of the team leaders, who had previously been in charge, were promoted to be captains and reorganized into a reserve force of 200 people. Most of these were women and skilled workers, such as Jorik's second brother John and Lael's wife Amy. This reserve force also trained in formation and discipline, but if war came, they would stand further back in battle. Knight Hans was appointed as the leader of the combat unit. As a knight who had fought on the battlefield and managed a manor for the Baron, he knew much more about fighting than Gonzalo. The total number of settlers reached 500. Pastor Arthur, being the second most knowledgeable person among the settlers, also played an important role. When a serf was crying out in stomach pain, Pastor Arthur's skills showed. After examining the serf, he quickly concluded it was caused by eating raw meat and parasites. He prepared a medicinal brew for the serf to drink. The serf was initially afraid of the red-haired pastor, thinking he was a devil sent to take their soul, but finally, the captain explained, "That's Gonzalo's order," and the serf drank the medicine. Compared to demons, Lord Gonzalo was generous and gave meat to the people. This made Gonzalo realize a problem. He had told the settlers not to drink unboiled water, and they followed this rule. But when he gave them meat, they didn't think to cook it first and ate it raw out of greed. So Gonzalo wrote down 6 rules for daily life. 1. Water must come from a living source, like a river or stream. 2. No urinating or defecating anywhere. Each camp must have a designated place. 3. If feeling unwell, go immediately to Pastor Arthur. 4. Wash hands, face, hair, and private areas regularly. Gonzalo did not recommend full-body washing to avoid colds. 5. Do not eat or drink any raw food, including water, meat, or vegetables. 6. Sleep near the campfire at night to stay warm and avoid getting cold. Gonzalo, Hans, Little Martin, and Arthur, the 4 who could read and write, began teaching the captains how to read and write. To help the settlers remember these rules, Gonzalo also created a simple game. The settlers on the ground use branches to learn 10 characters every day. Approximately Locke is semi-literate and responsible for supervision. Whoever finishes the task the fastest will receive a pound of meat. This game is played once each morning and afternoon. In the early morning, inside the camp tent, 2 servants are already packing their belongings. They are the sons of the Garcia family servants, named Sias and Bering, who have also come along. Their loyalty is naturally high. They usually have many tasks for Gonzalo, such as doing laundry, cooking, setting up tents, arranging tables and beds, learning writing, helping organize information, and passing messages. In a past life as a leader, I had 3 male secretaries. I know how important secretaries are. Gonzalo has been training these people as semi-secretaries. In this era, their roles are more like housekeepers and clerks. Gonzalo sits in a chair, holding a piece of paper, looking at the dense writing in front of him. It contains the information about the settlers, compiled by Little Martin. Name, John. Gender, male. Age, 20. Skills, carpentry, bargaining, running. Name, Shack. Gender, male. Age, 34. Skills, blacksmith, bragging, heavy drinking, strong. Name, Alan. Gender, female. Age, 17. Skills, mushroom picking, farming among the settlers. Many women are skilled in making ropes and sewing clothes. 2 carpenters, 1 stonemason, and 1 tanner were all bought from Baron Porter. There is also a blacksmith. John brought him from the city. This blacksmith was expelled from the smithy because of drinking issues. Later, he became friends with John and was brought along. This kind of blacksmith is paid a proper salary. There is also a barber named Joppas, who was captured as a cultist. After Father Laurie judged him, he believed Joppas was coerced into joining the cult. When he learned Joppas was a barber, he asked Gonzalo if he wanted him. Gonzalo saw that Joppas's favorability was still 20, so he took him. After Gonzalo's heart-to-heart talk and integrating into the group, his loyalty increased to 60. In this era, barbers are not just for cutting hair. They also perform surgeries. Some wounds that Pastor Arthur cannot treat, especially arrow wounds, are handled only by Joppas the barber. Baron Raymond only gave Gonzalo apprentices, but those Gonzalo recruited were truly skilled craftsmen. Baron Raymond wouldn't send real artisans to the frontier. Gonzalo stepped out of the tent and saw that the campfire outside had already gone out. The tents were packed onto ox carts. Everyone in the camp was carrying their belongings, holding hands, and looking at Gonzalo with hope for the future. Finally, Little Martin approached Gonzalo and loudly announced, "Report. Young Master Gonzalo, the exploration team has a total of 516 people, 22 horses, 1 wagon, and 3 ox carts. Gonzalo didn't buy many oxen because they moved too slowly. If they encountered rebel cultists or bandits, at least they could run away. The carts could be abandoned if needed. These oxen were for eating on the way. When they reached Sunrise Harbor, they planned to buy more animals. South of here, cattle are cheaper, and it would be great to buy water buffaloes that can plow fields." The wagon was for when Gonzalo was tired of riding. So far, he had no plans to become a laborer or a blacksmith. After all, Gonzalo was still a noble at heart. Gonzalo mounted his horse and spoke loudly. "No matter where you come from, what your status is, or what hardships and unfairness you've experienced, starting today, you are no longer knights and servants, serfs and slaves, or craftsmen and workers. You are my pioneers, Gonzalo's settlers. I know the journey is dangerous, rebels, bandits, monsters, and different tribes. I, Gonzalo Garcia, swear before the Lord of Light to protect all your interests as the Lord of this frontier. Forward, exploration team. Set sail." After saying this, The settlers looked surprised and found it hard to believe. Most of them thought Gonzalo was just talking nonsense, like a noble's idle words. Noblemen often did this. Today they were in a good mood and talked nonsense. Tomorrow they forgot everything, and the day after, they might whip you. But some people kept these words in their hearts. So far, every promise Gonzalo made has been kept. They ate whole grain bread, received 10 pounds of meat, and enjoyed meat soup. Never before had any lord done such a thing. They swore that all of this was because of the young lord with long black hair in front of them.